Chapter 13:13. Tang Jing flew even higher. Suddenly, he took a step back in the air and stabilized himself. The others watched this scene nervously. The demons were trembling with fear. The enemy's army was coming. If this defense failed, it would be bad news for them. Tang Jing took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Collect." He activated the sky-swallowing technique with all his might. His true chi poured into the black hole like a flood. In an instant, the black hole expanded again, completely enveloping the opposing black light. Whoosh whoosh. The black light dispersed and was sucked into the black hole. Gradually, the black light disappeared into the black hole. Ah, how could this be? He actually succeeded. When the fiend saw this, he was scared out of his wits. The black light was an attack triggered by the formation chi you had specially constructed. The stone pillar was called the sky pillar. It connected the sky and the earth, drawing upon the power of heaven and earth. It was supported by a secret technique of the demons to trigger the black light. The black light was like a bullet, never missing a target. It could accurately hit every enemy. In the blink of an eye, the black hole had completely enveloped the black light. With a whoosh, the black light disappeared without a trace. It was completely sucked into the black hole. Tang Jing breathed a sigh of relief. He quickly removed the black hole and dove toward the mountain peak. Tian Chanzi and the others were shocked. They shouted, "Charge!" Whoosh whoosh whoosh. One by one, they dove toward the mountain peak. People jumped out of helicopters and opened their parachutes. They floated down from the sky like mushrooms and landed on the mountain peak. Immediately, the mountain peak was filled with people. The demons had the advantage in numbers. Tang Zhang's people were not at a disadvantage. Because there were several experts holding the line, the situation was even more favorable. Bang bang bang. The four symbols knight finally broke through the encirclement and arrived in front of the stone pillar. Tang Jing also killed his way over. He looked up at the tall stone pillar. Tang Jing did not know what was so mysterious about the stone pillar, but he was sure it was very beneficial to the demons. Therefore, he ordered without hesitation, "For symbols knight, destroy it." The four symbols knight waved his arms and smashed the stone pillar without hesitation. No! The demons screamed and tried to stop him, but they were held back by the others and couldn't get close to the stone pillar. Boom! With a heaven-shocking sound, the stone pillar was directly smashed apart. It fell heavily onto the mountain peak, smashing off a large chunk of rock. Then, he fell down the mountain slope into the bottomless cliff. The demons looked as if they had lost their parents as they watched this scene in a daze. The morale of Tang Zhang's side was like a rainbow. They cheered one after another, and the battle became even more spirited. The devil race's momentum plummeted, and they all retreated. Tang Zhang's gaze turned cold as he locked onto a person in the crowd. Earlier, this person was the one who was giving orders to the other devils. He was definitely the leader of the devil race. In a flash, he appeared behind the other party. The other party reacted as well. He abruptly turned around and used his transcendent artifact to greet Tang Jing. A black hole suddenly appeared in Tang Zhang's palm. The magic treasure left his hand and was sucked into the black hole. His opponent cursed inwardly, but it was too late. The suction force of the black hole had firmly enveloped him. Ah! The man screamed as he flew into Tang Zhang's hands. He was firmly controlled by Tang Jing, unable to move. Tang Jing didn't interrogate him. Instead, he grabbed the top of the man's head with his big mouth and activated the soul search technique. All the information quickly entered the man's brain. His eyes lit up, and he shouted as if he had found a treasure, "I finally know." Seeing this, the others hurriedly asked, "What?" "We have the whereabouts of the shamans," Tang Zhang said in surprise. Let's go. We'll head east. Lord Envoy, where are our clansmen? Yi Yuan laid on the shoulder of the four symbols venerable and asked weakly. Don't worry, I already know where they are. I will definitely save them. Tang Jing comforted her. Yi Yuan nodded lightly, looked at Tang Jing pleadingly, and said, Please, Lord Envoy. Then what about this place? Tian Chanzi pointed at the demons and asked. Tang Jing hesitated. This was the lair of the demons. If it could be completely destroyed, it would undoubtedly be a fatal blow to the demons. However, it would not be easy to completely mess with this lair. There were too many remnants of the demons, and if they wanted to completely annihilate the other party, it would definitely take a lot of time. Then there would be no way to save the witch clan in time. After weighing the pros and cons, Tang Jing made a decision: retreat. Everyone fought fiercely for a while and suffered casualties. Hearing Tang Jing's order, they all retreated without hesitation. The demons suffered heavy casualties. Looking at the retreating enemies, they did not chase after them with all their might. Their responsibility was to protect their nest. Moreover, these people also understood that not only did the other party have a large number of people, they also had experts helping them. Tian Chanzi and the others came and went quickly. They only had a slight taste of the battle, and then they rushed to the next battlefield. Tang Jing rode the somersault cloud and walked side by side with the others. The rumbling sound of the helicopter's propellers was like a rainbow. Where are we going next? The Empyrean fairy asked curiously. Tang Jing looked around. The experts related to him had basically come to help, even his grandfather had come. Just now, his grandfather had participated in the battle. Although it was his first time participating in a battle, the old man was not afraid. However, he was kind by nature. Even if he defeated his opponents, he did not kill all of them. Instead, he almost fell into a dangerous situation several times. Fortunately, the others helped and turned the situation into safety. The old man fell into silence, reminiscing about the first battle of his life, and also summarizing his experience and lessons. He gradually understood that his previous concepts could not be applied. Being kind to others was the concept of ordinary people. Between cultivators, a single word of disagreement would cause a big fight, and it could even harm lives. If he kept hesitating, not only could he hurt himself, he could also hurt others. He gritted his teeth and thought to himself, from now on, I will be kind and benevolent to ordinary people, but I will not show mercy to the demons. Without a doubt, this battle had a great impact on the old man, and it was obvious that it had changed him. He seemed to have some understanding of Tang Jing's actions and style of doing things. Of course, Tang Jing did not know that there would be such a pleasant surprise. He looked in front of him, and his attention was completely focused on the witches. The others all looked at him and listened to him point out the direction. He pondered for a long time before finally opening his mouth. Mount Tai. Mount Tai. The others were stunned. What were they going there for? Huaxia had 5 mountains, and Mount Tai was the head of the 5. In ancient poems, there was a wonderful line that described the majesty of Mount Tai, which was the magnificent sight of Mount Tai. The 5 mountains were the most important mountain ranges in Huaxia. It was an invisible symbol, and the ancient emperors would climb to the top of Mount Tai to worship the heavens. It was enough to show the importance of Mount Tai. Yes, the witches were taken to Mount Tai. Tang Jing said in a deep voice. Why did they take them to Mount Tai? Our guess was not wrong. Regarding the wildlands, the demons did indeed have a backup plan. The key part of this plan was the witches. They wanted to use the witches as a sacrifice to reappear the wildlands. What? The others were shocked, especially the witches. Their expressions changed drastically. In that case, the witches had become sacrificial lambs. The key was that the wildlands had reappeared in the world, so the witches had become accomplices, even though this was not their original intention. No, we have to stop all of this. Yi Yuan kept coughing. He was so emotional that his wound split open again and blood flowed out. Don't worry, we won't let them succeed. Tang Jing quickly comforted him. Empyrean Fairy frowned. She could not understand the reason, and asked, using the witch clan as a sacrifice, why can the wildlands reappear in the world? The witch clan was the first to live in the wildlands. Unknowingly, the blood of the witch clan had a savage aura. After generations of inheritance, this savage aura still existed. Especially since the witch clan had always been imprisoned in the 10,000 huge mountains and did not communicate with the outside world, this caused their savage aura to not be polluted and maintained its purity. Tang Jing explained non-stop. The others were suddenly enlightened, and immediately understood why Qiyu wanted to imprison the witch clan even when he was on the verge of death. He was not doing this to protect the witch clan, but to use the witch clan in the future to make the wildlands reappear in the world. Tens of thousands of years ago, Qiyu had already thought of this plan. Everyone was speechless. A plan that had lasted for tens of thousands of years, no one else could be so meticulous, but Qiyu had done it. This is too vicious. So it wasn't to protect the witch clan, but to make them sacrificial lambs. Yi Dingdang said indignantly. The witch clan was also furious, with mixed feelings. Back then, when they found out that Qiyu was still alive, they had even discussed whether they should follow their ancestor, Qiyu, or stay by the side of the emissary, Tang Jing. Now that he thought about it, this discussion was simply unnecessary. If they had always decided to follow Qiyu, then they would have been sending themselves to the edge of the blade. Then there wouldn't be people like today who would travel thousands of miles and put in so much effort to rescue them. Immediately, the witch clan secretly rejoiced, and looked at Tang Jing with an even more grateful gaze. I know why the demon clan went to Mount Tai. The mysterious fairy of the Nine Heavens said thoughtfully, Mount Tai's status is extraordinary. In ancient times, there was a saying that the Son of Heaven would offer a pilgrimage to Mount Tai. Because Mount Tai can affect the Qi meridian of the 5 moons, and thus affect the luck of the world. With the blood sacrifice of the witch clan, they can spread the news of the wildlands from Mount Tai to the world. This is like a spark of fire that will spread throughout every inch of the country like a prairie fire. Hearing this, everyone's expression changed again, and they all looked at Tang Jing. Tang Jing's face was gloomy, and he nodded his head solemnly. Obviously, the information gathered from the demon clan's brain was consistent with what the Empyrean Fairy had said. This way, the situation would become even more dangerous. As long as the demon clan succeeded, this world would never be at peace. Everyone was determined that they could not let the demon race succeed. Everyone looked at each other and saw the determination in each other's eyes. Fortunately, there were no big cities below. Otherwise, such a huge commotion would definitely cause a huge uproar. However, even if there was a big city, they would still fly over without hesitation. Now that the situation was critical, they could no longer care so much. In the distance, a mountain peak that towered into the clouds entered his eyes. This mountain peak seemed to be connected to the sky, but it was also like a sharp sword that pierced into the clouds. Chapter 13-14. Mount Tai. Everyone's eyes lit up as they watched the poem intently. They could feel the level of the poem. I will climb to the top and look down on all the other mountains. It was not an exaggeration at all. Boom! A ray of bloody light shot up from the top of Mount Tai. The sky seemed to be torn apart by the bloody light. It was an earth-shattering scene. Everyone was stunned. Their expressions changed as they looked at each other. It's too late. Tang Jing squeezed out these 2 words with difficulty. No, we have to stop them. He was not willing to fail just like that. Somersault cloud, quick! The somersault cloud shook violently. Except for Tang Jing, everyone was shaken off. Tian Chanzi and the others reacted quickly and caught a few martial artists who did not know how to fly. Whoosh! The somersault cloud carried Tang Jing and disappeared in front of everyone's eyes at the fastest speed. Even its afterimage could not be seen. Seeing this, the others woke up from their daze and shouted, "Charge!" The sound of helicopters piercing through the air was heard as they rushed to the top of Mount Tai. However, they were not as fast as the somersault cloud. Even the Empyrean fairy, who had the highest cultivation, was not as fast as them. She finally understood that there was a huge difference between her speed and the somersault clouds. She could barely keep up with the somersault cloud, but it was deliberately going easy on her. In the blink of an eye, Tang Jing had arrived at the top of Mount Tai. A group of people was standing on the altar at the top of the mountain. This altar was where the emperors of previous dynasties worshipped the heavens. It was usually treated as a tourist attraction. However, there was not a single tourist at the moment. The top of Mount Tai was shrouded in fog. It was dark and dense, like the sign of a storm. The tourist attraction had noticed this and closed the attraction. Therefore, no one came up and no one would discover what the demons were doing. The sorcerer tribe stood in a row in front of the altar. Streaks of blood flowed down their necks. They could not move as if they had been immobilized. They are not dead yet. Tang Zhang's eyes lit up. Even though he was far away, he could see that the sorcerer tribe was still alive. Chi Yu sat cross-legged on the highest point of the altar. He raised his hands to the sky and mumbled something. The wind continued to blow around him and soared into the sky. The blood that flowed from the shaman's body danced in the wind and was sucked into the seal. Then, it turned into streaks of bloody light that soared into the sky and continuously rushed into the sky. Streaks of blood appeared in the sky. Starting from the top of Mount Tai, they split into 4 lines and extended in 4 directions. Tang Jing stared intently at this inconceivable scene, especially when he saw the 4 bloodlines spreading in 4 directions. His heart trembled, and he immediately thought of the other 4 peaks. Chi Yu was obviously using Mount Tai as the center to inject the shaman's blood into the other 4 mountains. When the blood reached the other 4 mountains, the spell was completed. The savage lands would reappear in the world, and not just in one place, but in the 5 great peaks. With the momentum of a single spark starting a prairie fire, it would expand to every corner. They haven't succeeded yet. There's still a sliver of hope. Tang Jing muttered to himself. Somersault cloud, rush down. The somersault cloud whistled and swooped down, immediately attracting the attention of the demons. Saint King and a few of his subordinates rose into the sky. When he saw clearly that it was Tang Jing, the shock in Saint King's eyes was indescribable. Back then, he led his subordinates and fled, not daring to fight against the Dragon Slayer. He thought that Tang Jing would die. He never thought that Tang Jing would actually stand in front of him safe and sound. Aren't you dead? Saint King pointed at Tang Jing and shouted in disbelief. Tang Jing looked at him coldly and said, You wish for me to die, but how can I do as you wish? Saint King, I already know the plan of the demons. So, you want the savage lands to reappear in the world. How vicious. Saint King had not yet digested his shock when he heard Tang Jing expose the demon's plan with a single sentence. Another wave of shock rose in his heart. How did you know? If you don't want others to know, don't do it in the first place. Tang Jing said resolutely. Ancestor Chi Yu once said that you are a very cunning person who is good at creating miracles. I didn't believe it before, but now I do. It's a pity that your miraculous career will come to an end. Saint King said fiercely. I don't have time to talk nonsense with you. Tang Jing moved his mind and the somersault cloud understood his intentions. With a whoosh, he passed by Saint King and the others and rushed towards the altar. Audacious, you actually want to interrupt Ancestor Chio's casting and stop him. The sage saw through Tang Zhang's intentions and loudly roared. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. All of the devilish beings instantly locked onto him and surrounded him in unison. Tang Zhang reached out with his hand, and a black hole appeared in his palm. A demon was immediately sucked over, and with a scream, he fell from the sky. Soul Devour. This was another ability of the sky swallowing technique. Tang Zhang directly used his killer move. A few demons died in his hands and fell from midair. Tang Zhang rushed to the altar and was only about 10 meters away. He was almost within reach. The witch tribesmen turned their eyes and looked at Tang Zhang. The flames of hope burned in their eyes. They couldn't move or speak, but they expressed the excitement and joy in their hearts with their eyes. Tang Zhang also saw the look in their eyes and shouted, "Everyone, don't worry, I will save you all." Humph, do you really think that we demons are just decorations? So many of us can't stop you. Saint King sneered. He thought that Tang Zhang was courting death. Who said that he's alone? A delicate shout came from the sky. The rumbling sound came from afar and arrived in front of them in the blink of an eye. The demon's attention was focused on the altar. Now, they finally noticed the mechs and cultivators flying in from afar. Whoosh! A figure descended from the sky and landed in front of Tang Zhang. It was the Empyrean fairy. She playfully looked at Saint King and said, "You said that he's alone. Then what am I? What are those people?" Although the sage didn't turn around, the corner of his eyes had already swept the enemy that was flying diagonally behind him. The corners of his mouth fiercely twitched a few times. The demon race's conduct was so strict that it was practically airtight. Unexpectedly, this group of uninvited guests had still managed to catch up. He looked at Chiyu on the altar and thought, Ancestor is at the final critical moment. He must not be disturbed. They must be stopped. Saint King knew that this was a difficult task. Even so, he couldn't back down. He wouldn't back down. His expression was stern. He raised his thick eyebrows and shouted loudly, "Demons, listen to my order. Stop them. They must not be allowed to disturb Ancestor." Yes. On the peak of Mount Tai, all the demons responded in unison. They stood up straight. Their killing intent and fighting spirit soared to the sky, making people shudder. You're not the only one with people. The others had all arrived. Tang Zhang shouted, and they responded in unison. Attack! Attack! Tang Zhang and Saint King gave the order at the same time. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Countless magical weapons flew from their respective camps and attacked each other with the power of thunder. Warriors jumped down from the helicopters. This time, the helicopters were not too far away from the peak of Mount Tai. These warriors didn't have parachutes, so they jumped down directly. The cultivators also swooped down. Boom boom boom. The magical weapons were the first to clash in midair. Lights filled the sky like the most dazzling fireworks. Tang Zhang tried to take advantage of the chaos to rush to the altar, but Saint King refused to leave. He stopped him and sneered, "I'm here. Don't even think about disturbing Ancestor. You demons really don't have any good people. You actually use such a vicious method. You will harm the innocent people in the world. Do you know that?" Tang Zhang scolded. Saint King said disapprovingly, "Innocent people. Haha, they're just a bunch of ants. In history, these people were used as sacrifices. Moreover, what right do you have to say that the demons are all bad people? Don't the Yellow Emperor and his people want to gather the Golden Crow's soul and let the soul of the Golden Crow roast the earth and let the Yellow Emperor be reborn? Could it be that this is what you call a righteous path? It's just the pot calling the kettle black. I'm not with them." Tang Zhang argued. Haha, then you're a little smarter. That group of people is a group of people who will do anything. It's wise to stay far away from them. However, you don't have to worry. When the barbarian land reappears in the world, there will be nothing to worry about. Saint King said contemptuously. You are all bad people. You don't care about the people of the world. You are selfish and only care about yourself. You can sacrifice anyone else. Tang Jing roared and rushed to Saint King, trying to break through his blockade. When Saint King had just returned, his cultivation had dropped greatly after going through the space door. Now, he and the other demons had completely recovered their cultivation. They had almost increased by more than one level. When he fought for the dark stone of heaven and earth in front of the tree of life, he was only at the 7th grade of the soul formation realm. After experiencing the threat of the dragon slayer, he gritted his teeth and broke through the barriers. He advanced by leaps and bounds. Not only did he recover his cultivation, but because of Chi Yu's guidance, he had surpassed his previous peak state and reached the 2nd grade of the Mahayana realm. The 2nd grade of the Mahayana realm was the same level as Shura. It was even one level higher than the Empyrean fairy. Back then, he was only at the 1st grade of the Mahayana realm in the sky beyond heaven. This was not enough to fight against the powerhouses of the sky beyond heaven. Therefore, the demons lived a very sullen life in the sky beyond heaven. They were like rats crossing the street, hiding from place to place. The most important thing was that the talents of the demons had withered. He was the only remaining master of the Mahayana realm. In the past, there were actually other masters of the Mahayana realm, but they died in the battle with the powerhouses of the sky beyond heaven. If it was not for him, the only remaining master of the Mahayana realm, the demons would have been exterminated in the sky beyond heaven. Saint King was confident that he could stop these people. In fact, he was most afraid of the people of the Yellow Emperor's tribe. In addition, the person he was most afraid of was the mysterious man, the Dragon Slayer. That man's cultivation reminded him of the powerhouses of the sky beyond heaven. The fear of being unable to win seemed to have returned and lingered. Chapter 13-15. Tang Zheng was blocked by Saint King, and he shouted, Azura. Whoosh! A cold wind blew, and Azura appeared in front of him, blocking Saint King for him. Saint King's pupils constricted, and he gritted his teeth. Azura, it's you again. How many times have you ruined my plans? This time, I'll destroy your soul. Whoosh! Saint King held the sky-splitting axe and slashed down from the sky, directly tearing the air apart. In the next second, the sky-splitting axe was above Azura's head. Azura's lips curled into a sinister smile, and he shouted, Azura sword. Clang! The Azura sword appeared out of thin air and blocked the sky-splitting axe's attack. Saint King was shocked and shouted, how is that possible? He was already a 2nd-stage Mahayana realm cultivator, and the power of this attack was extraordinary, but it was blocked by Azura so easily. He widened his eyes and stared at Azura in disbelief. Azura stared at him ferociously, and without a word, the Azura sword's blade changed, blocking the sky-splitting axe. The powerful blade, without any fancy moves, stabbed straight at Saint King. Saint King did not retreat. Instead, he activated his divine power, and the sky-splitting axe shone brightly. It actually split into two into four, and in an instant, there were hundreds of sky-splitting axes. The light of these sky-splitting axes intertwined, forming a gigantic sky-splitting axe that occupied almost half of the sky. Ha ha ha, Azura, take this. Saint King looked up to the sky and laughed wildly. The sky-splitting axe fell heavily, and a huge hole was torn in the sky again. This hole grew bigger and bigger, quickly spreading towards Azura. Azura's expression also became serious. He held the Azura sword with both hands, and the Azura sword shone brightly. In an instant, it also grew into a towering sword, as if it was going to pierce the sky. Whoosh! The Shura raised his head, and the tip of his blade rose. The sharp blade streaked across the sky, drawing a long black crack in the sky. The sword and the axe collided with a loud bang. It was like the sun had exploded, and the sky was filled with light that made people unable to open their eyes. The battle stopped abruptly for a few seconds. However, the attacks of the weapons did not stop, and the remaining force did not dissipate. Both parties were unable to dodge in time, and were hit and fell down. In addition, many people could not stand steadily and were hit by the mighty shock waves, flying out like kites with broken strings. This was a battle between Mahayana realm experts. Not only the two of them, but the others were affected even more. These people were like a small boat in the middle of the waves. The aftermath of the two people's attacks caused them to suffer greatly. The helicopter in the sky made a cracking sound as its propeller was broken by the impact, and it fell from the sky. The flight crew screamed as they fell. Tang Zhang was one of the first to open his eyes. When he saw the cabin crew, his figure flashed as he rushed over. With a wave of his hand, Sumera whirled open and sucked them in. After experiencing this battle, Tang Zhang gradually understood that Sumera heavens would become more and more useful. He was no longer fighting alone, but in large numbers. The transportation of people was a big problem, but with Sumera Underworld, this problem was more or less solved. This was also the advantage that he had over Chi-Yu. However, Chi-Yu's people were all cultivators, and almost all of them could fly, so there was no need to worry about the problem of flying. However, Tang Zhang's people coexisted with cultivators. Since cultivators could not fly, they could only rely on Sumera heavens. In the past, he had never wanted too many people to enter Sumera heavens, especially since Shura had always been in Sumera heavens. What if he lost his temper and killed a lot of people? After experiencing the kidnapping incident, he did not have full confidence in the practice of isolating several areas in Sumera heavens. But now Shura had enough wisdom, and his anger had been reduced by the Ksitigarbha Sutra. He was no longer the killing machine from before. Without enough reason, he would not go crazy and do whatever he wanted in Sumera heavens. Therefore, Tang Zhang could rest assured that the others would enter Sumera heavens. The others also opened their eyes one after another and found that there was a big hole in the sky, which was caused by the heaven-splitting axe and Shura saber. Everyone looked at each other, marveling at the consequences of the attacks of the two. Tang Zhang did not have time to think too much, because the blood light that rose from the altar was not affected by the attacks of the two at all. The blood light continued to rush into the sky, and the four bloodlines spread farther and farther, and no end could be seen. Taking advantage of the moment when the others were distracted, he slipped through the crowd with a whoosh and fell toward the altar. Of course, Saint King would not forget this person who took advantage of the situation. His figure flashed, trying to intercept Tang Zhang. However, Shura firmly locked onto Saint King, not giving him a chance to entangle Tang Zhang. Like a shadow, he stood in front of Tang Zhang and blocked Saint King. Saint King's eyes were about to burst, and he roared, "Get lost!" Of course, Shura would not get lost. Both of them were second-grade Mahayana realm cultivators, and their strength was equal. No one could completely defeat the other in a short time. If the two sides continued to fight, they would be in a stalemate, and it would be a long tug of war. Tang Zhang turned his head and nodded slightly at Shura. Shura understood and said, "Go, I will block him. He will not be able to catch up to you." Saint King was so angry that he stomped his feet, but there was nothing he could do. He could only use his power, raise the heaven-splitting axe, and attack Shura. Shura was not afraid at all. He wielded the Shura saber and started a 300-round tug of war with Saint King. The others also came back to their senses, and one after another, they wielded their magic weapons and launched an attack. Empyrean Fairy was first-grade Mahayana realm, and Tian Chanzi was almost at the threshold of the Mahayana realm. The two of them blocked most of the demons. However, the demons were not made of paper. There were several ninth-grade divine transformation realm cultivators who were evenly matched with the two of them. Tang Zheng was already standing on the altar. Qiyu acted as if he did not see it. He raised his head and looked at the sky with a burning gaze. He chanted and raised his hands high. Waves of mysterious power were emitted from his body, then merged with the blood of the shamans and flew into the sky. Tang Zheng knew that he could not delay. He immediately activated the sky-swallowing technique and slapped Qiyu, trying to stop him. Whoosh! A blood-red light spread out from the altar, forming a solid barrel-like barrier. Tang Zheng hit the barrier and was directly bounced out. He staggered and fell to the ground. He quickly stabilized himself and looked at the blood-red barrier in horror. The witch race still did not move, and blood kept flowing out. Qiyu was also indifferent, but he seemed to be laughing at Tang Zheng for overestimating himself. He knew that this barrier could stop Tang Zheng, so he was not worried at all. In other words, he did not care about Tang Zheng's attack at all. When the holy sage saw this scene, he couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief as he muttered to himself, "Ancestor Qiyu is indeed farsighted." He took every conceivable possibility into consideration and built this barrier in advance, causing Tang Zheng to eat a big loss. Shura was also very surprised. He had worked so hard to stall Saint King, but Tang Zheng did not succeed. He had missed such a good opportunity. Saint King saw through Shura's thoughts. He glanced at him mockingly and said, "Shura, do you really think that you can keep pestering my mother? Dream on." Shura raised his head high. He did not take Saint King's provocation to heart. He had an assessment of his own strength, and he also knew the strength of Saint King. No matter how confident Saint King was, Shura did not panic. He was confident that he could fight with him. "I've seen enough of you, monster from the ghost world. Go to hell, Fornax formation." Saint King shouted hysterically. In the crowd, a few demons who were fighting fiercely suddenly retreated and came to Saint King's side. They pressed on their chests and sang in unison, "With my blood, heaven and earth as a furnace, form the Fornax formation." Drops of blood flew out from their hearts. Last time, during the Battle of Mount Buzhou, Saint King used his own blood as a guide to activate the Fornax formation. However, now that he was facing so many strong enemies, he naturally would not use his own blood as a guide. After all, it would consume his power in a short time. At this critical moment, he had to take charge of the overall situation. How could he be injured? But this did not mean that the Fornax formation this time was weaker than the last time. After all, a few demon masters in the divine transformation realm used their own blood as a guide. The burst power was already terrifying. Drops of blood gathered in the middle, merged into one drop, and then slowly rose into the sky. Tang Zheng also saw this scene from the side of the altar. He was shocked and quickly shouted, "Shura, stop them, don't let the Fornax formation succeed." The Fornax formation gathered yang qi, which would cause fatal damage to Shura. Once Shura was injured or restrained, they would be even less of a match for the demons. After all, comparing the two sides, the overall strength of the demons was still a level higher. These demons had experienced countless life and death battles in the heavens beyond heaven. They were experienced in hundreds of battles. Their combat power could be imagined. Shura also understood his situation. Last time, he had discussed a countermeasure with Tang Zheng, so he did not panic. Roar! Shura roared violently. With a bang, his body exploded and turned into wisps of yin qi. Like a black cloud, he rushed towards Saint King and the others. The strong yin qi caused the temperature to drop by a few degrees. Under the bright sun, there was a bone-chilling coldness. That drop of blood had yet to rise into the sky. The cold wind howled, and the extremely cold yin qi immediately wrapped around the drop of blood. The drop of blood kept struggling. Obviously, the demons were casting spells, trying to break through the confinement of the yin qi. The yin qi spread very quickly, and it did not have a fixed shape. A part of it instantly filled the air in front of Saint King and the others. Saint King quickly held his breath and cast spells to protect himself. Not only could the yin qi be breathed in through the mouth and nose, but it could also penetrate through every pore and seep into the body. So, as long as the body was unable to defend against the yin qi, it would seep into the body and cause serious damage. Saint King reminded loudly, "Don't let the yin qi enter your body, protect yourself well." However, although he had time to activate his skills to protect himself and not let the yin qi have a chance, after all, the others were not as strong as him, and their reactions were not as fast as his. Although the demons held their breath, they still let the yin qi enter through their pores. Suddenly, as if they had fallen into a 10,000-year-old ice cave, they could not move at all. Their skin turned black, and it spread to their brains. After a while, their bodies were charred black. Boom! With an explosion, they were immediately blown into pieces. Chapter 13:16. As soon as the demons died, the drop of heart blood also exploded into pieces and was completely devoured by the yin qi. 5.8 Lookbook, Web, ha, let's see what else you can do. What kind of broken furnace formation is this, and you still want to hurt me? Shura's wild laughter sounded out in the sky. The yin qi was all-pervasive and attacked indiscriminately. Therefore, seeing that the human devil clan's heavenly furnace formation had been destroyed and a few experts of the demon clan had been killed, the yin qi quickly gathered again, and not long after, it transformed into Shura. Shura held the Azura blade in his hand and looked at Saint King and the others mockingly. Saint King's face was gloomy as if it was about to rain. He never thought that his ancestor would think of a way to restrain Shura, and Shura would use a similar method to successfully counterattack. He even killed a few of his subordinates. Saint King was both shocked and furious. This way, without the heavenly furnace formation, it would be a fool's dream to defeat Shura quickly. He looked at Shura unwillingly, but there was nothing he could do. Tang Zheng, do your own thing, don't worry about anything else. Shura looked at Tang Zheng with a flaunting look and said casually. Tang Zheng heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, they had discussed a plan beforehand, otherwise, Shura would have been injured by the heavenly furnace formation again. He turned around and stared at Chiyu, as well as the bloody light that was like an iron wall. When Empyrean Fairy and the others saw this, they were all greatly encouraged, their fighting spirit was high, and shouted, "Kill!" The deafening shouts of killing shot straight to the sky. Both sides were once again engaged in a fierce battle. Empyrean Fairy's mountain river map floated in the sky, continuously releasing rays of light. Wind, rain, thunder, and lightning took turns to attack, giving the demon clan a bloody lesson. Tian Chanzi was not willing to fall behind, and fought to his heart's content with the demon clan experts. He had not fought such a battle for many years, and that was 1,000 years ago. This kind of battle caused his blood that had been silent for a long time to boil. His face was flushed red, and the more he fought, the braver he became. Li Xiaotian controlled the sun-shooting arrows and heaven-shocking bow, as if he had the help of a god. One golden arrow after another streaked across the sky and shot towards the demon clan. Some of the demons managed to dodge, but some couldn't. They were pierced by the arrows and died immediately. 9 shooting sun arrows had been shot out, and she had no more arrows in her hand. Seeing this, the devil's sect grinned and surrounded her, thinking that she was already a fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Li Xiaotian looked at them without the slightest bit of fear. A pitiful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth as he looked behind them. The 9 shooting sun arrows were so fast that they disappeared after hitting the enemy. Li Xiaotian thought, 9 arrows in one. In the distance, where no one could see, the 9 shooting sun arrows, which were originally floating in the air, flew towards each other. Finally, they merged into one and shone brightly. Whoosh! The shooting sun arrows whizzed back. The demons surrounded Li Xiaotian complacently, completely unaware that the Grim Reaper had quietly arrived. Look behind you. Li Xiaotian pointed behind everyone and reminded them. Are you trying to trick a 3-year-old child? How could we fall for such a trick? The demons madly laughed in disdain. Li Xiaotian shook his head. If you don't listen to my advice, you deserve to die. Back then, when she had just lost her memories, Li Xiaotian's heart was pure and she couldn't bear to hurt others. But after experiencing so much, her nature seemed to have gradually sprouted. The cunning Li Xiaotian of the past seemed to have returned. This time, she no longer targeted Tang Jing, but used all of this to deal with Tang Zhang's enemies. The demons laughed arrogantly, but their arrogance didn't last for long. An arrow pierced through their chests. They died with their heads hanging down, their eyes gradually losing their vitality as they stared at the bloody holes in their chests. They didn't understand how they had died. Yi Dingdang, Fang Shishir and Lu Qingmei were each other's horns. The three of them worked together and tacitly resisted the attacks from all directions. The few of them were still too weak, and their battle experience couldn't be compared to the demons, so they were often stretched thin. But they did not retreat. Their faces were firm, without the slightest hesitation or fear. Tang Dehai changed his mind, and did not show any mercy. His cultivation was not high, but fortunately, he had Marshall and the other Witch clan disciples protecting him, so he did not have to worry about his life. He even took the opportunity to kill a demon. This was the first time in his life that his mind was shaken, and he almost fell from the sky. Only after a long while did he regain his senses. If there was a first time, there would be a second time. After breaking through the initial psychological barrier, the old man's fighting strength had obviously risen by a level. His cultivation had actually broken through in such a dangerous situation, reaching the 9th grade of Anidia, almost touching the threshold of the Jindan stage. He was beaming with joy, he never thought that there would be such a pleasant surprise. This was the harvest brought about by the change in his state of mind. Not only did cultivators train their bodies, but the most important thing was to train their hearts. The state of mind was the foundation of everything, and if the state of mind was unstable, it would give birth to inner demons. With a strong state of mind, one's cultivation would naturally advance by leaps and bounds, and one would be able to cultivate with twice the result with half the effort. Yen Padian led the elites of the Yen family to truly witness a great battle between cultivators, and even personally participated in it. Only then did he realize how laughable he was in the past. Using the word "sit and watch the sky" to describe him was already being polite. In the eyes of these cultivators, the so-called clans were like clay chickens and pottery dogs. They couldn't even withstand a single blow and could be crushed with a light flick of a finger. It was no wonder that Tian Chanzi dared to cause a ruckus at his birthday banquet. Other than his confidence, there was also the majestic aura that came from the bones of cultivators. Although there were casualties among his own people, after experiencing this tempering, those who survived would undergo a great transformation. This was extremely important to the Yen family. After this battle, as long as they were not completely annihilated, the Yen family would be able to climb to an even higher peak. Moreover, he had his own mysterious daughter, Yen Qingyi, so he was even more confident. Yen Padian took the lead, waved the sword in his hand, and shouted with an imposing manner, "Kill!" Many martial warriors charged towards the demon clan without any regard for their lives. Hearing the deafening shouts, Tang Jing forced himself to calm down. At this time, being agitated could only be a bad thing. He had to force himself to calm down and think of a way to break through the blood barrier. He had already tried a few times, but the blood barrier only shook a few times, but it did not move at all, as if mocking him for overestimating himself. The blood line in the sky extended into the distance and could no longer be seen. It was unknown if it had reached the other 4 peaks. The witch clan's life force was rapidly depleting, and their faces were pale. It was obvious that they would not be able to hold on for long. Chiyu still did not send him off. He maintained that posture like a statue, but the words he muttered showed that he was still a living being. Chiyu, I definitely can't let you succeed. Tang Zheng looked at Chiyu unwillingly, then looked up at the sky, his pupils also turning blood red from the reflection of the bloodline. Bloodline, bloodline. He also muttered to himself. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind, and he slapped his thigh. Chiyu, this bloodline is definitely extraordinary, but even so, I still want to give it a try. Whiz. He soared into the air and directly arrived at the highest point in the sky. At the place where the bloodlight gathered and the bloodline originated from, a terrifying aura attacked his soul. Just now, when he was on the ground, he did not feel it too strongly. Now that he was close to it, he truly felt the terror within. Could it be that this terrifying aura is the savage aura? The blood of the witch clan contained a savage aura. Chiyu was trying to stimulate the savage aura within it, and then, using the demon clan's secret technique to activate the power of the 5 mountains, allowing the savage lands to reappear in the world, turning this world into a savage lands. It must be. I have never felt such an aura before. Other than the savage aura, I really can't think of anything else. He was firm in his thoughts. His deduction was correct. This was indeed the savage aura, passed down from generation to generation in the witch clan's bloodline. Chiyu had captured the witch clan for this savage aura, and then used the witch clan's blood as a guide to completely release the savage aura within. So what if it's the savage aura? I'm the witch clan's messenger, so I should be able to overcome this savage aura. Tang Zheng encouraged himself. In fact, he already knew that the so-called Lord Messenger was probably just a joke. The witch clan was imprisoned by Chiyu, so the explanation to the witch clan was naturally from Chiyu's mouth. Chiyu understood that after thousands of years, he would not be the original Chiyu's body, but a brand new him. The witch clan might not listen to the orders of a brand new him, but he had the 9-sun saint body and could awaken the sleeping witch clan's saint beast, so the witch clan would naturally listen to his orders. Therefore, he deliberately left behind the news that the Lord Messenger would deal with the witch clan, allowing the witch clan to pass it down from generation to generation. This was originally a preparation for himself. However, the heavens were playing tricks on him. Tang Zheng was the first to arrive, and he also had the 9-sun saint body, so he accidentally became the witch clan's messenger, causing the entire witch clan to submit to him. If Chiyu had known about this earlier, he probably would not have left behind the *T prophecy of the witch clan's messenger. That way, there would not be so many problems. The witch clan would also obediently listen to his orders and take the initiative to contribute their own savage aura. Tang Zheng was extremely intelligent, and had already figured out the reason behind this. The witch clan was not stupid. For example, the elder must have understood this, but he did not lead his clan members away from Tang Zheng. This was because the witch clan elder had his own judgment. His heart had long since submitted to the messenger, Tang Zheng, so why would he care about Chiyu? Tang Zheng guarded his mind and activated the heaven-devouring technique. Right now, he only had the heaven-devouring technique to use. Furthermore, the power of the heaven-devouring technique was more and more beyond his expectations. Of course, he would not give up on such a powerful divine ability. Whoosh whoosh. The black hole appeared, but the savage aura did not weaken in the slightest. Instead, it became stronger and stronger. When the blood in the witch clan's body runs out, the savage aura will become even stronger. At that time, everything will end. I have to stop all of this before that happens. He stretched out his hands, and the 2 black holes merged together, increasing in number. His hands began to tremble. The black hole approached the blood light bit by bit, and his body trembled more and more violently. In the end, it was as if he was sifting chaff. However, he still gritted his teeth and did not retreat. Instead, he used all of his power and relied on the willpower of a citizen to approach step by step. Today's 2 chapters have been updated. Chapter 13-17. Tang Jing relied on his strong willpower to resist the barbaric aura and approached the bloody light step by step. The others also saw this scene and their hearts could not help but beat faster. Saint King revealed a mocking smile and said word by word, "You overestimate yourself." The demons did not protect the bloody light in the sky at all. There was a reason for that. They were not afraid that someone would attack the bloody light. The barbaric aura made people not dare to approach it. The barbaric aura was so strong that even Saint King was afraid. Red Lunar Beast, Thundercloud Beast, and Gue Qiansui opened their eyes wide and stared at the scene. The 2 red lunar beasts, one big and one small, cooperated with each other. The barbs on their tails were like sharp swords, leaving fatal wounds on the demons. Thundercloud Beast was injured by Chiyu last time and almost lost its life. Seeing the demons this time, its anger was not small. With a flap of its wings, it was incomparably huge. It seemed as if it could blot out the sky and cover the sun. Immediately, it covered the few devils. The demons tried to break through the encirclement, but lightning struck them. With a few cracking sounds, the demons were hit by the lightning. Their bodies trembled, and finally, green smoke rose and they fell to the ground and died. Thundercloud Beast's lightning attack was very powerful and caught people off guard. It really made the demons suffer, and also greatly reduced the pressure on their comrades. Gue Qiansui was not willing to fall behind. He spat out a water column from his mouth and hit a demon. Clang! A cold light hit Gue Qiansui's turtle shell, splashing out a string of fierce sparks. The turtle shell did not move and was not damaged at all. This was Gue Qiansui's strength. Its magic attack was not as strong as Red Lunar Beast and Thundercloud Beast. But its defense was unmatched by the other 2. This was the innate advantage of the Turtle Clan. It relied on the turtle shell that was as strong as a fortress. If it hit the demons directly, it would at least cause serious injuries. Xiao Bai had not woken up since the last time he hibernated. Otherwise, he would be able to display great power. The 4 symbols venerables followed their previous fighting style. They were bold, sometimes separated, sometimes united, and really gave the demons a huge killing chance. Quite a few demons were thrown off their feet by the 4 symbols venerables. Some people who knew about the 4 symbols venerables' back door tried to attack it and take control of it. Unfortunately, right when they thought they'd succeeded, the 4 symbols venerables suddenly swung their arms and smashed all of them into pieces. From then on, no one dared to have designs on the 4 symbols venerables. When the sage saw this scene, it was hard for him to conceal his astonishment. He had already activated the back door of the 4 symbols venerable last time. He only needed one more step to completely control it. He never expected that Tang Jing would use some unknown method to actually restore the consciousness of the 4 symbols venerable. Most importantly, his strength had risen to a whole new level. He screamed in his heart, "Impossible." However, this matter was not fake at all. I clearly opened the back door of the 4 symbols venerable, so how could it listen to Tang Zhang's orders again, and its strength even increased by another level? Of course, Saint King couldn't figure it out. Even if he had thousands of questions, he could only swallow them down. Tang Zhang was completely focused. He didn't care about the other people's worries or contempt. He only had eyes for the bloody light and the bloody lines. Thump. He took a step in the air with great difficulty. It was as if a 1,000-pound boulder was tied to his leg, but he was walking in the air as if he was walking on flat ground. Thump, thump, thump. He gritted his teeth and took a few more steps with great difficulty. He was even closer now. Saint King kept an eye on Tang Zheng while dealing with the Asuras. When he realized that Tang Zheng was getting closer and closer, he finally couldn't help but reveal a look of surprise. How could this be? Was the aura of the wilderness useless against him? No. The demon race inherited from the Ninely tribe. After generations of evolution, they couldn't immediately adapt to the aura of the wilderness. How could he not be afraid? If the wilderness reappeared in the world, the demon race could survive, but they would need a certain amount of time to adapt. They couldn't be like Tang Zheng, who was completely unafraid of the aura of the wilderness. No, it's not that he's not afraid of the aura of the wilderness. He's resisting it head-on. Saint King's eyes lit up. He finally understood. He couldn't help but ridicule. He wants to fight against the aura of the wilderness with his little strength. He's daydreaming. Tang Zheng was indeed activating his power and resisting with great difficulty. This was a difficult path to take. Every step seemed to exhaust all his energy. He stretched out his trembling hands. The two black holes had become big enough and were aimed at the bloody light and the bloody lines. Whoosh! The air was sucked into the black holes first. The aura of the wilderness, the bloody light, and the bloody lines didn't move at all, as if they could resist the suction of the black holes. Tang Zheng's mind was greatly shaken. He had never seen anything that could remain unmoved under the terrifying suction of the black holes. This was too unbelievable. Suddenly, he gradually understood where the demon race's confidence in not protecting this place came from. This was indeed not easy to shake. However, if the sky-swallowing technique couldn't disintegrate all this, wouldn't the demon race have really succeeded? No. He gritted his teeth and these two words burst out from the bottom of his heart. Thump. He took another step forward. The black holes directly blocked the bloody light. Buzz. Buzz. The bloody light finally trembled. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up like a person who was about to die of thirst seeing water. The light of hope immediately shrouded his heart. Sky-swallowing technique, absorb. Whoosh! All the air in this area was sucked in, and the bloody light's trembling gradually intensified. The light seemed to have dimmed a little. It really works. He suppressed a smile at the corner of his mouth. This scene deeply shocked the others. The people on Tang Zheng's side were greatly encouraged. They all cheered and were in high fighting spirit. The demon race people looked as if they had seen a ghost. It was as if their worldview had collapsed. They kept muttering, "Impossible. How is this possible?" Saint King could no longer remain calm. He abandoned the Azura and flew straight into the sky in an attempt to stop Tang Zheng. Thump. The wilderness aura directly blocked his path. He had no choice but to stop, and his breathing involuntarily quickened. He stared at Tang Zheng, who was not far away, like a knife. This short distance was like a chasm that he couldn't cross at all. This was the so-called so close yet worlds apart. I can't accept this. I'm a demon, and he's just an ordinary person. Moreover, my cultivation is higher than his. Why can he get close but I can't? Saint King was unwilling to accept this and roared. Thump. He finally took a step forward and was one step closer to Tang Zheng. His eyes lit up as he lifted his heavy foot and took another step forward. Thump. Before his foot even touched the ground, he was knocked back 2 steps by a terrifying force. He was even further away from Tang Zheng. Saint King was flustered and exasperated. He shouted, "Why?" He didn't know that every step Tang Zheng took, the suction of the black hole would cancel out a part of the wilderness aura. This way, he could get closer step by step. Saint King didn't have the sky-swallowing technique, so naturally, he couldn't do all this. Saint King was a smart person. He immediately locked onto the black hole in front of Tang Jing and said hatefully, "It must be because of this black hole. Damn it, how can the sky-swallowing technique be so powerful in his hands?" Saint King didn't care about the sky-swallowing technique in the past. In fact, he had almost forgotten these 3 words. How could he have thought that the sky-swallowing technique could be so powerful? He didn't have time to sigh. He tried to rush up again. After taking 2 steps forward with difficulty, he couldn't move forward anymore. Buzz! The blood light trembled more and more violently. Even the blood lines in the sky became unstable and became erratic. Tang Zhang! An angry roar came from below. Everyone looked over in unison. They saw that Chi Yu's eyes were bursting with a terrifying light. He locked onto Tang Jing with a burning gaze. That roar came from his mouth. Chi Yu finally spoke. Why did he speak at this critical moment? Everyone's heart trembled. They immediately understood that this was because Tang Jing had posed a threat to his actions. That was why he couldn't help but speak. Tang Jing also understood this and was greatly encouraged. Tang Jing, do you really think that you can destroy my 10,000-year plan with the sky-swallowing technique? Chi Yu asked coldly with a murderous aura. Tang Jing took a deep breath and spoke with difficulty, "Can't I?" "Then why are you so panicked?" I'm panicked." Chi Yu disdainfully denied. "You think too highly of yourself. The reappearance of the wilderness is imperative. No one can stop this." Tang Jing snorted and simply didn't answer. He focused on activating the sky-swallowing technique to resist the blood light. The wilderness aura was getting stronger and stronger. Although the sky-swallowing technique neutralized a portion of it, a large portion of it was still constantly eroding Tang Zhang's body. Ordinary people, even cultivators, once eroded by the wilderness aura, would suddenly die over time. The wilderness aura would damage their meridians, making them unable to circulate their true chi freely. In the end, the wilderness aura would completely destroy their entire system. In this way, even immortals would find it difficult to save them. Tang Jing didn't know this, but he had already sensed that there was an additional trace of energy in his meridians that was damaging them. He was multitasking. He maintained the sky-swallowing technique while mobilizing his true chi in an attempt to refine the wilderness aura. However, why could the wilderness aura make people tremble in fear? It was because the wilderness aura was not easy to refine. No matter how much true chi he mobilized, it was like scratching an itch through a boot. It had no effect at all. His expression changed drastically. He immediately understood the seriousness of the situation. Chi Yu saw his change from afar and heaved a sigh of relief. He originally thought that Tang Jing could really destroy his plan with the sky-swallowing technique. Therefore, he couldn't help but speak out. He didn't expect that his worries were unnecessary. The wilderness aura was as powerful as he had expected. Even after tens of thousands of years, it was still not as powerful as before. Chi Yu was the clearest about the wilderness aura. Back then, he had led the Jiuli tribe to war in the north and south. In particular, during the successive battles with the emperor, he had also planned to draw on the wilderness aura and calmly deal a fatal blow to the Yellow Emperor's tribe. However, it was easy to think about it, but impossible to do it. Chapter 13:18. The savage aura had existed for a long time. It was said that it had existed since the beginning of the world. No one had ever controlled the savage aura before. Chi Yu had overestimated himself and tried to accomplish this feat, but in the end, he failed. But Chi Yu and the witch race, and even the Jiuli race were born in the savage aura. So they were not afraid of the savage aura. Even I am unable to resist the savage aura. I can only take advantage of the situation, but this little brat wants to resist the savage aura. He really overestimates himself. Chi Yu said in his heart. Tang Jing clenched his teeth and persevered. However, a voice rang out in his heart. The inner demons earnestly advised, "Young man, don't try to be brave. This is the savage aura. Moreover, it has already entered your body. It will cause fatal damage to you. If you retreat now, you can still refine the savage aura. It won't cause too much damage to you." Seeing Tang Jing remain silent, the inner demons earnestly said, "I'm not trying to attack you. Back then, Qi wanted to control the savage aura. Do you know the result?" Tang Jing said, "From what you're saying, the result was definitely failure. You are a smart person. You know the result. Do you think you are stronger than Qi Yu?" The inner demons disapprovingly said, "Yes, you are both celestials. You have the 9 yang saint body. But back then, Qi Yu was already in his peak state. The difference between you and him is too great. Do you think it is possible for him to do what he couldn't do?" Tang Zheng was not reconciled and did not admit defeat as he said, "What the world thinks is impossible, it may not be impossible." The inner demons helplessly sighed, "Fine, then I didn't say anything. However, the one who will be hurt in the end is yourself. Don't blame me for not warning you." Hua. Just as the inner demon finished speaking, thousands of savage qi poured into Tang Zheng's head from the top of his head as if he was suddenly enlightened. Tang Zheng frowned. A piercing pain spread from his meridians to every corner of his body. Damn! He turned pale with fright. Without a doubt, the influence of the savage qi had intensified. If he did not control it, his situation would become very bad. Therefore, he hurriedly circulated his genuine qi in an attempt to resist the barbaric aura. However, true qi couldn't do anything to the savage aura at all. It couldn't even scratch an itch. The pain became more and more intense, tormenting his nerves and every cell. He finally couldn't take it anymore and let out a heart-wrenching scream. Seeing this, Saint King was stunned for a moment and hurriedly stopped rushing toward Tang Jing. The savage aura made it difficult for him to move forward, and he had long wanted to stop. This time, when he saw Tang Zheng's situation, he finally stopped in surprise. He hurriedly took a few steps back to avoid the savage aura and laughed sinisterly. "Ah, Tang Jing, this is your end. The savage aura will make you wish you were dead." He was greatly relieved. Now he didn't have to worry about Tang Jing. The situation was settled, and the success of his ancestors' 10,000-year plan was in sight. Qi Yu was also relieved. He sneered and said, "Tang Jing, was this your plan? You overestimated yourself. Where did all those bold words go? Why are there only screams left?" Tang Zheng's screams became louder and louder. This was beyond his control. His face was full of cold sweat, and his back was soaked. However, he still maintained a trace of reason and did not retreat in panic. Although his hands were trembling, he did not stop the sky-swallowing technique. The black hole was still firmly attached to the bloody light. The bloody light was trembling more and more violently, and the 4 bloody lines did not extend further. Tang Zheng looked up to the sky and roared. His voice shook the surroundings and affected everyone's nerves. Everyone turned to look at him. When the girls saw his appearance, they felt like their hearts were being twisted. Fang Shishir was the first to shout, "Huang Xiang, go and save him." Huang Xiang had been slaughtering his way through the demons. Although he was only at the first level of the soul formation stage, he was invulnerable and fearless. Many demon experts had died at his hands. Hearing his master's order, Huang Xiang did not hesitate. He was not afraid of the aura of savagery at all. He charged toward Tang Zheng without hesitation. Bang! Before he could get close, he was also knocked back by the aura of savagery. He fell heavily on the mountain peak, sending rocks flying everywhere. It took him a while to get up. Fang Shishir's heart clenched. There was nothing she could do. The others also wanted to help Tang Jing. However, How could the demons let them succeed? They all moved to stop them. Senior 4 symbols, come here. With a thought, Tang Jing directly communicated with the senior 4 symbols. The 4 symbols merged into one and turned into a giant. It punched and kicked the demons back, then leaped into the air and pounced toward Tang Jing. Boom! There was an earth-shattering explosion. The 4 symbols stopped in midair. This scene was very strange. The 4 symbols was suspended in midair. It was the formless aura of savagery that was blocking it. It was obvious that the 4 symbols was using all of its power to try and break through this resistance. The stalemate lasted for a few seconds. Bang! The 4 symbols was sent flying. It was like a giant meteor that landed on the mountain peak. The mountain peak trembled a few times. The 4 symbols staggered back to the edge of the cliff before finally stabilizing its body. Everyone was incredulous. Even the 4 symbols could not do anything. Was there really no way to save Tang Jing? Many people's faces turned pale. Helplessness appeared in their eyes. Hiss! Finally, Tang Jing sucked in a breath of cold air and stopped screaming. This required a great deal of willpower and courage. He also realized that the others' attempts to save him were useless. They did not have the sky-swallowing technique and could not break through the aura of savagery. There was only one way for him to survive. Save himself. Yes. He could only save himself. Don't come over. He roared, stopping the others from acting rashly. I'm not dead yet. The others' eyes lit up. The fact that Tang Jing could still maintain his rationality meant that the situation had not reached the worst-case scenario. They all spoke words of encouragement. Chi Yu disdainfully attacked, you're already an arrow at the end of its flight. You're just struggling on your deathbed. Do you really think you can resist the aura of savagery? You're too naive. Tang Jing glanced at Chi Yu and said through gritted teeth, Chi Yu, it's too early to make a conclusion. Humph, stubborn as a dead duck. Chi Yu said coldly. Tang Jing did not say anything else. The aura of savagery had already made him unable to say anything. I'm coming. Crack. An extremely weak sound rang out. However, this sound entered Tang Jing and Chi Yu's ears and attracted their attention at the same time. What's that sound? Chi Yu's heart skipped a beat. His gaze was like a scanner as it swept over the area he could see. Tang Jing's eyes also widened. At almost the same time as Chi Yu, he discovered the source of the sound. A crack appeared. The source of the sound was here. A crack appeared on the bloody light and slowly spread in all directions. How is this possible? How is this possible? Chi Yu turned pale with fright as he screamed. Tang Jing's spirit shook and his eyes lit up. This was the scene of coming back from the jaws of death. The sky-swallowing technique could actually destroy this bloody light. This bloody light contained the aura of savagery, but it actually could not resist the sky-swallowing technique. At first, no one believed that the sky-swallowing technique could succeed. No one believed that Tang Jing could succeed. However, Tang Jing did not believe this and persisted. He secretly swore that he would resist the aura of savagery and Chi Yu this time. The heavens did not disappoint those who persevered. He actually succeeded. In fact, things in the world were generally like this. Every time one persevered, perhaps the sea and sky would open up and the harvest would be success. If one did not persevere, failure would always accompany them and they would fall into the abyss of failure forever. Perseverance was victory. This sentence seemed simple, but in fact, one had to experience it personally to understand the truth contained in it. He did not have time to appreciate the panic of the demons. His eyes focused on the crack. While resisting the aura of savagery in his body, he urged the sky-swallowing technique. At this moment, the two sides unconsciously stopped attacking and looked at Tang Jing at the same time. There was no doubt that he had become the person who determined the success or failure of the entire battle. The faces of the demons became extremely ugly. On the other hand, people on Tang Zhang's side were jubilant and almost jumped up. The women felt like they were on a roller coaster. They were originally worried to death, but at this moment, they wanted to laugh. This was the person they chose. He would not be defeated. He would always stand tall. Even if it was difficult and dangerous, he would move forward bravely. Qi Yu was unwilling. He did not dare to believe this result, but he had to believe it. He gritted his teeth. After a while, he shouted hysterically, "Tang Jing, I won't let you destroy my 10,000-year plan." He suddenly moved and changed his hand gestures. A mysterious and vast power surged out and spread to every corner of the altar, enveloping the sorcerer tribe members. The shaman's eyes immediately changed. They became desperate. Their remaining vitality was like flowing water, quickly pouring out of their bodies. Bang! Some of them could not hold on and fell. They had reached the end of their lives. The shamans outside turned pale with fright and screamed. No! They wanted to rush up to save their clansmen, but they were immediately sent flying by the aura of savagery. Although their blood had the aura of savagery, they were not used to it. Therefore, when they rushed over, they were still rejected by the aura. Bang, bang, bang. One by one, the shamans fell. It was like a relay. In an instant, 4 shamans lost their lives. This scene caused continuous screams, and heart-wrenching screams were endless. They could only watch helplessly as their compatriots died, but they could not do anything. This kind of defeat and blow could not be described with words. Qi Yu was extremely carefree. He swept away the haze in his heart and laughed wildly. Tang Jing, let's see how you're going to break through now. Tang Jing was burning with anxiety, but there was nothing he could do. He could only watch them die. He was filled with regret. However, the battle was far from over. He still had a chance to save the other shamans. Suddenly, his pupils constricted, and he revealed an incredulous expression. He stared straight at the bloodlight that was close to him. The cracks that had spread out were actually healing bit by bit. Without a doubt, this was definitely because Qi Yu had forcefully extracted more blood from the shamans to make up for the damage of the sky-devouring skill. Chapter 13:19. This unforeseen event really scared Tang Jing, and he roared in a low voice, "No." Qi Yu laughed complacently, "Ha ha ha, you think that little trick can spoil my plans, now you know what it's like to be a mantis trying to stop a chariot." Seeing that their ancestor had turned the situation around, the demons all laughed. Tang Zhang was not reconciled, and kept urging the swallowing sky technique. Boom! A loud sound came from the black hole. Tang Zhang was greatly shaken, and he felt that there seemed to be a little change in the black hole. The black hole shrank. Ha! Why did it shrink? Tang Zhang was baffled. Seeing this, the demons all laughed wildly, thinking that Tang Zhang was an arrow at the end of its flight, and that even the swallowing sky technique could not support him, and was on the verge of collapse. Ha! Tang Zhang, obediently surrender and accept your death. Saint King did not let go of any opportunity to ridicule him, and could not wait to say. The other demons echoed, Saint King's words are reasonable, boy, quickly accept your death obediently, and still dare to fight against us demons, you are simply seeking your own death. Qi Yu's face also revealed an unfathomable smile, thinking that victory was in his hands. Seeing that his subordinates had ridiculed Tang Jing, he seemed to be concluding, Tang Jing, you and I are acquainted, I will let you die a quick death. Tang Jing was silent, his feelings were completely different from the others. The black hole had indeed changed, there was no doubt about this. However, the swallowing sky technique was still at the sea-shifting realm, what changes would the black hole have? He was somewhat expectant, but also somewhat confused. What's wrong with him? Chi Yu's expression suddenly froze, and he stared straight at Tang Jing. Tang Jing did not lose his head out of fear, as this was too abnormal. Chi Yu understood Tang Jing, and immediately realized that things might have changed. In a flash, the black hole shrank to the size of a fist, and was completely different from before, as if it was about to disappear. Suddenly, the black hole stopped shrinking, and a terrifying force spread out from the black hole. Hua! The aura between heaven and earth changed greatly. Before, the black hole did not absorb much of the savage aura, and used its own attraction to resist the savage aura. The savage aura seemed to be able to resist the attraction of the black hole. But at this moment, everything changed. Like a stream flowing into the sea, the savage aura surged into the black hole, and the fist-sized black hole seemed to have magical power, causing the savage aura's resistance to collapse. Chi Yu stared at the scene in disbelief, and screamed, "What the hell, how could this be?" Crack! The cracks on the bloody light widened again, and the 4 bloody lines came to an abrupt halt, stopping their extension. Obviously, this situation was more serious than the last time. Tang Jing, and Tang Jing, 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 Tang. Finally, his gaze focused on the remaining shamans again, and a fierce light flashed in his eyes as he hysterically said, "Don't blame me, this is all Tang Jing's fault. Originally, you could have lived a little longer, but now, you can all die." The sorcerer tribesmen were not frightened. Instead, they looked like they were ready to sacrifice themselves, which made Chi Yu even angrier. These people should have submitted to him, but in the end, they were taken advantage of by Tang Jing. "Go to hell!" Chi Yu roared and immediately cast a spell. Boom! There was an explosion above his head, and the bloody light shattered. Chi Yu was forced to stop. He looked up at the sky in disbelief, and watched as the bloody light shattered and scattered all over the sky. No! This voice seemed to burst out from the depths of his soul, soaring into the sky and deafening. The bloody lines also stopped extending, and broke in the middle, turning into drops of blood. Whoosh, whoosh. The drops of blood and the bloody light were sucked into the black hole. All the demons were stunned. A second ago, victory was in their grasp, but in the next second, despair descended. This roller coaster experience was almost enough to make them collapse. They did not dare to believe that this was real, nor did they want to believe it. Quite a few of them shook their heads and closed their eyes. It was as if when they opened their eyes, all of this would disappear. The previous taunts were like slaps to their faces, making them lose face and unable to show their faces. The Empyrean fairy and the others were stunned at first, but in an instant, their despairing mood was filled with the light of hope, and they all began to cheer. No one would have thought that Tang Jing would have a chance to turn the tables in this situation. Even Tang Jing himself did not expect this. His eyes were somewhat sluggish, but in the next second, he came back to his senses and hurriedly activated the heaven-devouring technique, eagerly absorbing everything. Rumble. Like a surging river, everything in the sky rushed into the black hole. The power of this small black hole was clearly greater than that of the previous giant black hole. When everyone saw the black hole, they could not help but feel fear and tremble from the depths of their souls. Of course, this was for the demons. The people on Tang Jing's side wanted nothing more than to hug the black hole and give it a kiss. Puff! Chi Yu's face kept changing, and in the end, it turned red. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood like an arrow. In the next moment, his face quickly turned from red to white, and in the end, it became deathly pale and dispirited. Ancestor! Saint King and the others turned pale with fright and screamed. Chiyu raised his hand with difficulty, stopping them from rushing over. Chiyu wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, slowly raised his head, and looked at Tang Jing with mixed feelings. He was just a little bit away from success, but in the end, he failed at the last minute. This was something he had never expected. The price he paid for this failure was more painful than expected, especially when the bloody light completely shattered and the bloody threads collapsed. His mind was violently shaken, and the true qi in his body began to move uncontrollably in his meridians. At this moment, he was unimaginably weak. No one knew about this, and he couldn't let anyone know about this. Otherwise, if he gave the enemy an opportunity, it wouldn't be as simple as a little failure, but would be life-threatening. He looked at Tang Jing hatefully, unable to imagine that he would be in such a sorry state in his hands, and that his life would be in danger. Although he wasn't in good condition, Empyrean Fairy and the others didn't rush up rashly. Chiyu had established an unfathomable image in their hearts, and this image had been solidified. Of course, they wouldn't have thought that Chiyu would be so weak at this moment. This was the consequence of giving up halfway and being interrupted by someone else. Chiyu had paid too much for all this, and his mind had long been connected with the bloody light and the bloody threads. The bloody light and the bloody threads were shattered, and his mind was more or less the same. Saint King and the others stared fiercely at Tang Jing, and couldn't wait to eat him alive. Finally, someone couldn't control his anger, and with a roar, he rushed up to the sky, activated his magic weapon, and rushed toward Tang Jing. The others couldn't stop him in time. Strangely, Saint King was the first to shout, "No!" But it was too late to stop him. This person and his magic weapon attacked not far away from Tang Jing. Boom! There was a shocking explosion, and the bloody light danced in the sky. Tang Jing was unharmed. That person had exploded into pieces, and his magic weapon was instantly shattered. Barbaric aura, don't go near. Saint King finally had time to remind them loudly, to prevent the other demons from being blinded by anger and making unnecessary sacrifices. The space around Tang Jing was completely covered by the barbaric aura, and no one dared to go near him. Otherwise, they would be like that person just now, whose body and magic weapon were shattered by the barbaric aura, and die. Empyrean Fairy and the others were delighted at first. This way, no one could go near Tang Jing and hurt him. But then, their expressions changed drastically, and they looked at Tang Jing worriedly. Not only could the barbaric aura prevent others from getting close, it could also hurt Tang Jing. He was surrounded by layers of barbaric aura, how could he avoid it? Everyone's hearts were in their throats. Chiyu reluctantly retracted his gaze from Tang Jing, and with a cold gaze, he stared at the witches who were still alive. At the last moment, Tang Jing saved most of the witches, and only a few died. Kill them. Chiyu ordered with a murderous aura. Saint King ordered and shouted, "Kill," and rushed toward the witches with a few demon masters. The witches didn't move, as if they were fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Stop! Empyrean Fairy and the others chased after them, trying to stop them. Whoosh! Seeing that the attacks were about to hit the witches, they suddenly moved. At the critical moment of life and death, they scattered and retreated, avoiding the fatal attack. The witches regained their mobility. With the last of their strength, they avoided the attack. Boom! The 4 divine beasts descended from the sky, crushing the altar and protecting the witches, glaring at the invading demons. The witches were invigorated, and they all shouted, "Guardian!" The 4 divine beasts were the guardians of the witches, and they had been so since ancient times. No one knew how long they had been there. This time, the 4 divine beasts once again carried out their duties as guardians. The elder's eyes were almost bleeding, and he looked at Chiyu with reddened eyes, saying, "Everyone says that you are the ancestor of the witches, and that you were the one who protected the witches back then, leaving behind the last seed. But your goal was actually the blood of the witches, your 10,000-year plan was really well planned." As he spoke, a murky tear fell from the corner of his eye. If it was in the past, the elder and the other witches still had a trace of respect and affection for Chi-Yu. After all, Chi-Yu was the ancestor of the witches in name. However, after experiencing all of this, everything disappeared without a trace, completely disappearing. Chi-Yu's expression changed, and said, "What right do you have to judge me? Back then, your ancestors followed me everywhere and were loyal to me. I didn't expect that they would have a descendant like you." The elder was not bewitched by his so-called righteousness, and said back, "That's because they didn't see through your true colors. For your own goals, you can do anything and sacrifice anyone. No wonder you lost to the Yellow Emperor back then. What's better about the Yellow Emperor than me? He's still the same person as me. If I had known that you would be so rebellious, I would have left you behind back then." Chi-Yu said regretfully. "Yes, this is the fate of the witches, for us to meet the emissary." "No, the emissary is just making things up. From today onwards, Tang Zheng is our master, and the witches will worship him as their master for generations to come. He is the only master of our witches." The elder's voice was sonorous and powerful, almost using all of his strength to shout out. In the end, he knelt down towards Tang Zheng, who was in the sky, his eyes brimming with tears as he shouted, "Master." This voice seemed to come from the depths of his soul, shaking one's heart. "Master." The other witches also had tears in their eyes. The elder had spoken the words from the bottom of their hearts. They all knelt down towards Tang Zheng and shouted loudly. Chapter 13:20. When the others saw this scene, they could not help but be affected by the emotions of the witch clan. Immediately, the way they looked at Tang Zheng changed. As the saying goes, a just cause enjoys abundant support, while an unjust cause finds little support. Without a doubt, Tang Zheng was a person who had achieved the Tao. Therefore, even the witch clan, who had a deep relationship with Chi-Yu, abandoned Chi-Yu and went over to Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng's group immediately felt honored, and a sense of pride arose spontaneously. His judgment was right, he had chosen the right person. Hearing this passionate and heroic declaration, the demon clan was furious. Their anger seemed to be about to break through the sky. However, they had no choice. This was the choice of the witch clan, and no one could interfere. The anger in Chi-Yu's heart could be imagined, but he was currently weak, and could not do anything to the witch clan. A strong killing intent had already been aroused in his heart by the witch clan. "Since you have chosen to stand against me, then I will prove how wrong your choice is. I will bring you a calamity," Chi-Yu said with a murderous aura. The elder led his clansmen to stand up and stood proudly. He looked at Chi-Yu fearlessly and said, "Death is terrifying, but it can't scare us. Our loyalty to our master can be witnessed by the sun and the moon, by the heavens and the earth, and will not be reduced by your threatening words." "You." Chi-Yu's chest heaved up and down, he was so angry that he almost bled. He held his breath in his chest and had nowhere to vent it. Seeing that, Saint King immediately berated with a stern voice, "Witch clan, you don't know what's good for you, and your death is not to be regretted. Demon clan, listen up, kill this group of witch clan people who have forgotten their ancestors." "Yes, sir." The demon clan had already accumulated a lot of anger and answered one after another. The witch clan did not have stage fright. They all stood up straight. Although they did not have much of their fighting strength, they did not weaken their aura. Chi-Yu then turned his gaze to Tang Zheng. Compared to the betrayal of the witch clan, Chi-Yu hated this brat even more. If not for him, none of this would have happened. Therefore, he was the main culprit behind all of this. "You keep saying that you're loyal to this brat, but do you know that he doesn't have long to live? Just as well, all of you can be companions on your way to the Yellow Springs," Chi-Yu shouted. As soon as he finished speaking, Tang Zheng let out a heart-wrenching scream. Although the black hole had absorbed most of the savage aura, he was still enveloped in it. Every pore on his body was in close contact with the savage aura. His situation was as bad as it could get. He still didn't give up, resisting the corrosion of the savage aura with great difficulty. Boom! Suddenly, a strange sound came from his body, and a black hole appeared in his body. This black hole was very similar to the black hole in the outside world, but it was a miniature version. The black hole was the size of a thumb, but it was in stark contrast to the Yuanying. The airflow around the black hole spun rapidly, but it was not sucked into the black hole. Instead, it formed a vortex. Boom! Another muffled sound was heard, and the black hole spewed out a burst of energy like a fountain. The energy rushed into the Yuanying in a mighty manner, and it was as if it was enlightened, washing away the pain caused by the savage aura. His expression immediately relaxed, and he looked like he was enjoying it very much. What's going on with him? Qiyu had been staring at Tang Jing, and he immediately noticed this. Tang Jing was also very surprised. Looking at the black hole, his heart stirred, and he naturally thought of the black hole of the sky-devouring skill. Could it be that the two black holes were originally one? Was this the sky-devouring skill's divine ability? However, this was not recorded in the sky-devouring skill's technique, so he had no way of knowing. The small black hole was still spewing out energy, and the energy was filled with a familiar aura. The savage aura. He carefully pondered and immediately recognized this specious aura. It was indeed the savage aura. Although it was different from the aura emitted by the shaman's blood in the world, it was the same aura. This could not be faked. Could it be that the two small black holes are connected, which is why the savage aura absorbed from the outside world is spewed out from the body? A puzzled look appeared in his eyes, but the more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. In the end, he directly confirmed this idea. Only in this way could everything be explained clearly. The sky-devouring skill actually has such a divine ability. This greatly exceeded my expectations, he muttered to himself. He paused for a moment before he continued, also, why didn't the savage aura that was spewing out cause any harm to me? On the contrary, it's actually assimilating the savage aura from before. If this step is successful, I won't have to be afraid of the savage aura anymore. Thinking of this, he could not help but feel excited. This way, he could turn the danger into safety. His complexion gradually improved, and his body stopped trembling. The pain on his face became weaker. In contrast, the light in his eyes became more and more dazzling. Whoosh whoosh. The savage aura in the world gradually calmed down and was completely absorbed by the black hole. When Qiyu saw this scene, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He could not believe what he was seeing. No, so much savage aura entered his body. How could he be safe and sound? Qiyu chattered non-stop and muttered to himself. The other demons also stopped and looked at Tang Jing with burning eyes, then at Qiyu, as if they were guessing why Qiyu's judgment had failed time and time again. Tang Jing was not killed by the savage aura as he had expected. On the contrary, he was alive and well. Tang Jing's face was flushed red and he was in high spirits. He stood with his head held high and floated in mid-air, looking down at everyone below. His gaze lingered on the witch clan. He had also heard the witch clan's oath just now. His heart was surging with emotions. The witch clan had actually recognized him as their master. This was not as simple as changing a name. Although the witch clan would listen to him in the past, the meaning was completely different now. He could even control the life and death of any witch clan member at will. This was the privilege of a master. Moreover, the witch clan would carry out any of Tang Jing's orders without any discount. They would not go against him in the slightest. Since he was the master, the witch clan had suffered heavy losses this time and so many people had died. Of course, he could not stay out of it. He had to seek justice for them. Therefore, he looked at the crowd sternly and said, Qiyu, you want to kill me, and I don't want you to continue to harm the world. Let's end this today." With that, he quickly rushed down. Chi-Yu had no way of dodging it all. Under the lock of such a powerful aura, he had suffered such heavy injuries that he had no way of dodging it all. However, he was not alone, so he was naturally not afraid. Therefore, he made a prompt decision and shouted, "Saint King, protect me." The sage's heartstrings trembled, and he deeply glanced at the Chi-Yu. He simply hadn't expected that the Chi-Yu would unexpectedly call for him to protect him. This meant that Chi-Yu's situation was very worrying. Saint King's heart tightened. He did not dare to delay. In a flash, he came to Chi-Yu's side and guarded him tightly. Chi-Yu did not want to show his cowardice, but reality did not allow it. If Tang Zheng rushed over, it would be too late for him to ask Saint King to protect him. For the sake of his life, he did not care about his face. A blush appeared on his weak and pale cheeks. He was ashamed and angry, but there was nothing he could do. Tang Zheng did not dare to say that he knew Chi-Yu very well, but he was the one who knew him the best. Therefore, his eyes lit up and he saw through Chi-Yu's thoughts at a glance. Immediately, he was overjoyed and cheered. Chi-Yu is an arrow at the end of its flight. Everyone, attack and kill the demons. With the order, everyone's eyes focused on Chi-Yu. Seeing his expression suddenly change, they immediately knew that Tang Zheng was right. At this moment, cheers shook the sky and they all attacked Chi-Yu. "Stop them." Saint King gave the order without hesitation. All the demons also swarmed towards the enemy. Immediately, the two sides were tangled together again. It was just that the demons were very annoyed. The situation changed so quickly that they were a little unable to adapt. Tang Zheng firmly locked onto Chi-Yu. Although Saint King was in front of him to protect him, he had the aura of a man guarding the pass. However, Tang Zheng still rushed down without hesitation. He was like a meteorite from outer space, with terrifying power. Saint King did not dare to be negligent. Although Tang Zheng's cultivation was far below his, he could not resist Tang Zheng's ability to come back from the dead. Therefore, Saint King raised the sky-splitting axe. Whoosh! The sky-splitting axe tore through the sky and went towards Tang Zheng. Seeing that the blade was about to land on his head, Tang Zheng dodged to the side, barely dodging the attack. But Saint King was not to be trifled with. His reaction was agile and could be said to be in peak condition. With a thought, the sky-splitting axe changed its attack trajectory. However, Tang Zheng's speed was too fast. He took advantage of this gap and slapped in front of Saint King. This was already a close-range battle. Tang Zheng broke through Saint King's defense, which made Saint King turn pale with fright. His hair stood on end. Saint King was at his wit's end. He could only slap out with his palm. His aura was even greater, and the air crackled. Bang! The two palms collided. Saint King was deeply afraid that Tang Zheng would suddenly activate the sky-swallowing technique to deal with him. Therefore, he moved away as soon as they touched. However, a burst of energy gushed out from Tang Zheng's palm and hit his palm hard. The two of them retreated at the same time. This burst of energy did not really do anything to Saint King. Saint King curled his lips and mocked, "You want to fight against me with this little ability? Do it in 100 days. Before he could say the word dream, he suddenly paused as if he was choked. He stared at his palm in horror and exclaimed, "What happened to my hand? What did you use to attack me just now?" Chi-Yu's eyes were like torches. He immediately saw through the clues and cried out in shock, "Savage aura, Tang Zheng, you can actually use the savage aura to attack. How is this possible? How can you control the savage aura?" As Chi-Yu spoke, he shook his head as if he had lost his soul. "Impossible, this is absolutely impossible." Chi-Yu had always wanted to control the savage aura. Whether it was in the ancient times or now, he had no way to succeed. He naturally thought that this was impossible. Chapter 13:21. Seeing that Chi-Yu was in a daze and kept talking to himself, the others were shocked. Especially when they heard him say that Tang Jing could control the savage aura, they were scared out of their wits. Before this, the demons had heard Chi-Yu introduce the uniqueness and horror of the savage aura. They had also heard Chi-Yu say that the savage aura could not be controlled. Wasn't what was happening now a slap in the face? It was a slap to Chi-Yu's face. This was also a slap to the faces of all the demons, causing them to lose face. The demons were all interested and had mixed feelings. They really did not know how to face all this. Saint King, however, felt as if he had been struck by lightning. He shouted and said with a trembling voice, "The savage aura is coming out of his palm, which means that the savage aura rushing into my body is also savage aura. This is bad." Although Saint King was a demon and the ancestors of the demons were immune to the savage aura, it did not mean that the demons would be immune to the savage aura immediately. This was a very long process. If too much of the savage aura entered his body, even if Saint King's cultivation was high, he would not be able to bear the consequences. He hurriedly used his chi to try to dissolve the savage aura, but his chi could not do anything. The savage aura was deeply rooted. What should I do? What should I do? Tang Zhang's eyes lit up. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he once again struck out with his palm. Saint King's pupils shrank as he stared at the incoming palm. He did not dare to take it head-on. Fearing that he would not be able to avoid it in time, his figure flashed and he dodged to the side. Bang! This palm missed and hit the ground, sending gravel flying. Seeing the panicked Saint King who only knew how to escape like a stray dog, Tang Jing laughed mockingly. "Saint King, Chi-Yu, didn't you say that you wanted to kill me? Now, I'm right in front of you. Come and kill me." Saint King and Chi-Yu couldn't wait to find a hole to hide in. Tang Jing controlled the wild aura, which was equivalent to having a great killing machine. It was obvious that he was a threat to Saint King. Of course they wanted to kill him, but how could they? Ha ha ha. Deafening laughter immediately erupted from the crowd. Everyone looked at the demons in ridicule. "If you won't kill me, then I'll kill you." Tang Jing did not hold back at all. He waved his hand and attacked Saint King. Saint King did not dare to face him head-on and hurriedly dodged. After forcing Saint King to retreat, Tang Jing changed the direction of his attack and aimed his spearhead at Chi-Yu. He quickly rushed toward Chi-Yu. Cunning! Chi-Yu and Saint King shouted, but there was nothing they could do. Chi-Yu was firmly locked on by Tang Jing's aura and could not escape at all. He could only watch as Tang Jing attacked. "Stop him!" Saint King saw the situation and did not rush to rescue him. Instead, he hysterically ordered. Whoosh! The two demons disregarded their own safety, as if they were not afraid of death, and rushed in front of Chi-Yu, blocking Tang Jing. Bang! Two palms were sent forward and hit the two in the chest. Their chests caved in at the same time, and they spat out blood. The wild aura rushed into their bodies like a mad bull, crashing in their 8 extraordinary meridians. In an instant, their eyes were wide open. Their bodies tilted and they fell to the ground, dead. The two blocked Tang Zheng's attack and protected Chi-Yu. However, the price was their own lives. Tang Zheng's pupils trembled. He was annoyed and unwilling. Saint King acted according to the situation and resisted the wild aura in his body with difficulty. He flew to Chi-Yu's side and helped him up. He could not wait to say, "Ancestor, let's go." Chi-Yu was unwilling to end things like this, but the reality was so. He had to bow his head. He nodded bitterly. Saint King understood and glared at Tang Jing. He said, "Retreat." Whoosh! The demons were also unwilling. They were full of anger and helplessness. However, Tang Zhang's wild aura was too threatening. They all ran away. Don't run. Chase. Tang Zhang did not give them a chance. He immediately shouted and chased after them. The demons were not weaker than them. Even if they ran away, they did not run for their lives like a sheet of loose sand. Instead, they brought up the rear and sped up to escape. They did not let Tang Zhang and the others beat them up like dogs in the water. The demons had experienced too many retreats in the sky beyond sky. They were orderly and minimized their losses. Tang Zhang and the others chased with all their might, but they only killed a few demons. At the peak of Mount Tai, the hubbub of voices was now silent. Only the sound of the wind could be heard. There were no more bloodlines and bloodlight in the sky. The sun drilled out of the clouds and shone on the mountain peak. The smell of blood was still very strong. It made people unable to stay here. The ground was almost dyed red with blood. Corpses fell in the pool of blood one after another. No one cared. No one noticed that there was a drop of blood in the pool of blood. It was very unusual. However, it was submerged in the pool of blood. It was like a drop of water mixed in the sea. It was difficult to notice. This drop of blood was different. It contained an aura. A wild aura. This was a drop of blood that fell from the sky. Although the sky swallowing technique was powerful, it had absorbed almost all the bloodlight and bloodlines. This was the only one that escaped the net. No one noticed at all. Crack. The drop of blood broke. The wild aura immediately spread out and fused with the other blood. However, this wild aura was very weak and difficult to detect. However, as the saying goes, a single spark can start a prairie fire. This wild aura was like a single spark that started a prairie fire. It fused with all the blood on the mountain peak. Moreover, it seeped into the ground and hid this wild aura deeply. Now, even if Tang Zhang and Qiyu came here, it would be difficult for them to discover that the wild aura was hidden in the ground. It could be foreseen that this land that was eroded by the wild aura would undergo earth-shattering changes. By the time others discovered this scene, everything would be too late. What would happen after the land was transformed by the wild aura? The answer was self-evident. A wild aura. This did not mean that using the blood of the witch race to sink into the soil could turn a piece of land into a wild aura. This had to be combined with a corresponding divine ability to achieve this effect. Previously, Qiyu had used this divine ability. However, his ambition was even greater. With the power of the 5 mountains, not only did he turn the peak of Mount Tai into a wild aura, but he also combined the power of the 5 mountains to make a wild aura descend on a large area of Huaxia. This was a very grand plan. As long as it was interrupted, the plan would naturally be ruined. However, the divine ability had already been used, and the blood already possessed this kind of demonic power. Thus, when this fish that had slipped through the net quietly fused into the ground, in time, this piece of land would naturally become a desolate land. However, this needed time to brew, and it would not have an immediate effect. In the sky, the two sides were chasing each other. The battle between the two sides was still tragic, especially the people who stayed behind to cover the rear. They were almost determined to die. Therefore, although there were only a few people, they still blocked this large army. In fact, Tang Zhang's people had exhausted too much. After experiencing such a life and death battle, they were almost exhausted. It was the final victory that motivated them and allowed them to persevere. Tang Zhang watched the demons escape, but there was nothing he could do. He could only stomp his feet hatefully, waved his hand, and said, "Forget it, don't chase a cornered enemy. Return to Mount Tai." Under Tang Zhang's order, they all turned around and returned to Mount Tai. After paying a certain price, the demons finally got rid of their pursuers. Immediately, they could not help but heave a sigh of relief. Chi Yu's expression was gloomy and uncertain. It was especially frightening. The other demons were as silent as cicadas in winter, not daring to speak. Saint King was still struggling to resist the wild aura. After all, the demons could adapt to the wild aura. Therefore, after putting in a lot of effort, he finally refined the wild aura and was safe and sound. Saint King looked at his battered and exhausted subordinates. He had led them back from the sky beyond heaven. He had wanted to do something big. But the cruelty of reality was beyond his imagination. First, Chi Yu appeared and took away his position as the #1 demon. From then on, he could only listen to Chi Yu's orders, and not everything was decided by himself. To be a leader who had always been giving orders, this kind of change in role made him very helpless. Later, Chi Yu's successive plans did not really succeed. Whether it was going to the Tree of Life to seize the dark stone of heaven and earth, or the operation at Mount Buzhou, these were all ruined by Tang Jing. Their plans did not succeed, which was very disheartening. There were some dissatisfied voices among the demons. However, Saint King's prestige was still there. Therefore, he forcibly suppressed all of this. Saint King sighed in his heart. It was difficult to hide his disappointed expression, and it was even more difficult to hide the regret in his heart. These people were all people who had followed him for countless years. Now, some were dead, and some were injured. It made him sigh endlessly. After a while, he retracted his gaze and gathered his courage to ask, "Ancestor, what should we do next?" Chi Yu glared at him fiercely. Seeing the expression between his eyebrows clearly, how could he not understand his thoughts? He said, "Are you feeling sorry for your subordinates who have died?" The sage was silent and didn't speak. "Humph, so it's true. Are you blaming me for causing their deaths?" Chi Yu questioned in a bad mood. "Your subordinate does not dare." Saint King hurriedly bowed. "Since you already think so, what else do you not dare to do?" Chi Yu's heart was actually suppressing a burst of anger. He had been defeated by Tang Jing time and time again. It was really very sullen. He really did not understand how Tang Jing, who was so weak, could cause so much trouble for him. Could it be that he was destined to be his nemesis? The ancients said that it was difficult for two Skywalkers to exist in the world. Now that he and Tang Jing coexisted, they could be considered two Skywalkers. In the future, there would definitely be one Skywalker who would disappear. Chi Yu had always thought that he was the Skywalker who had the last laugh. But after being defeated time and time again, a certain kind of vigilance appeared in his heart. Could it be that he, the Skywalker, was going to be replaced by Tang Jing, the Skywalker? Thinking of this, his body tensed up. Killing intent uncontrollably soared to the sky. The other demons felt the killing intent. They all lowered their heads and looked at him in awe. Ha ha ha, the famous Chi Yu is actually the general of a defeated army. He lost to a junior. Chapter 13:22. These ear-piercing words caused all the demons' anger to shoot up, especially Chi Yu. His eyes were red as he turned his head and stared in the direction of the voice. A black dot flashed and appeared not far away. He crossed his arms and looked like he was waiting to watch a good show. The contempt and disdain in his eyes were obvious. Chi Yu's pupils shrank as he said through gritted teeth, "Mo Xia." Mo Xia looked up to the sky and laughed maniacally. "Chi Yu, even in your dreams, you never thought that you would become like this. That there would be such a day, right? Mo Xia, don't be sarcastic. At least I'm still alive, and the master you swore loyalty to is dead." Chi Yu retorted. Mo Xia said calmly, "Master's resurrection is imminent. Your words are meaningless." Chi Yu's heart trembled as he asked, "Looks like you've collected enough pure yang energy. However, do you think Tang Jing will sit by and do nothing? You have to know that Tang Jing told me that you used the life totem to absorb pure yang energy. It's just that I have more important things to do, so I didn't pay attention to you. Looks like your so-called more important things are to bring the wildlands back to the world, right? Unfortunately, you failed. Mo mocked. Qiyu snorted coldly, do you think you can resurrect the Yellow Emperor? I'm not as stupid as you. Tang Jing ruined my plans every time. Aren't you the same? Wasn't the matter of the Golden Crow's soul and the life totem ruined by Tang Jing? Mo didn't fall into the trap and said calmly, but he didn't completely destroy it and make it impossible to salvage the situation. Right now, the plan is going smoothly. Even Tang Jing can't ruin it. Seeing how confident you are, then the Yellow Emperor's resurrection is a done deal. Qiyu asked. Mo smiled. Everything went without saying. Qiyu cursed in his heart, but there was nothing he could do. He didn't know what the other party was planning, so he couldn't do anything about it. When he thought about how the Yellow Emperor would be resurrected and how he would have to face his nemesis again, he found it hard to suppress the anger in his heart. From now on, not only would he have to face Tang Jing, but he would also have to face the Yellow Emperor. This was equivalent to being attacked from both sides. His situation would be very dangerous. An idea came to him, and he pretended to be kind and said, Mo, you and I are from the same era. Although we are enemies, we are still acquaintances. There is something I have to remind you of. Oh, when did you become so kind-hearted? Mo jokingly said, not believing Qiyu's so-called kindness. This is just a suggestion from an old acquaintance. Mo raised an eyebrow and said with interest, then I'd like to hear what kind of suggestion it is. Kill Tang Jing. Especially at this time when he has used up a lot of energy. If you kill him, no one will be able to ruin your plans. Qiyu's eyes were filled with killing intent as he spoke. Mo was slightly startled, and then he laughed loudly. Qiyu, you really haven't changed. Even at this time, you still want to instigate me to clear the obstacles for you. Do you think you're the only smart person in the world? Qiyu's motives were seen through, but he didn't panic. He calmly said, don't tell me my words don't make sense. Even if the Yellow Emperor is resurrected, Tang Jing will become his enemy in the future, and he may even become a great threat to him. Mo shook his head, although I admit that Tang Jing isn't normal, I have to say that you think too highly of him. You actually put him on the same level as Master. It was clear that even though Mo believed that Tang Jing was very powerful and difficult to deal with, and that he might be able to threaten him, he didn't believe that Tang Jing could threaten the Yellow Emperor. When he heard Qiyu's suggestion, he couldn't help but feel that it was ridiculous. Qiyu shook his head and sighed, you guys think too highly of yourselves. Even after tens of thousands of years, you guys are still the same. I don't need you to lecture me. You, on the other hand, have repeatedly suffered at the hands of Tang Jing. This can only mean one thing, you're too weak. Back then, you weren't a match for Master, and now, you're even less of a match for Master. Since that's the case, there's no need to wait for Master to make a move. I'll get rid of you first. Mo's killing intent surged as he finished speaking. Qiyu was suddenly startled. He was actually being looked down upon by the Yellow Emperor's subordinates. This was a great humiliation. It had to be known that back then, he could easily crush Mo's. The only one who could contend against him was the Yellow Emperor. This contrast between before and after made Qiyu's lungs almost explode. Mo's, you dare to clamor in front of me alone. You don't know how to write death. Back then, you survived, but now, you will definitely die. I will burn your bones and scatter your ashes. You will never be able to rise again. You will never have the chance to revive. Saint King, kill him. Qiyu ordered. Saint King, who had already dispelled the barbaric aura, found an opportunity to vent the anger in his heart. Whoosh! Saint King raised the sky-splitting axe, and a cold light flickered as he aimed it at Emosia. Emosia was not afraid at all. He sneered and said, "Chiyu, do you really think I'm alone?" Chiyu raised his eyebrows. He had a bad premonition. Sure enough, Emosia raised his hand, and there was a ring on his finger. With a flash of light, a black mass of people appeared behind him. Lu Wuxin and Yi Meiyu were among the crowd. In the battle of the life totem, the two of them fled in panic and were injured. Now that their injuries had healed, and their cultivation seemed to have improved a lot, they were in high spirits and full of fighting spirit. Storage ring. Chiyu's heart trembled as he cried out in shock, "You actually have such a storage magic treasure." This was the pain in Chiyu's heart. Although he had been resurrected for a long time and had the War Soul Sword, he still lacked a high-grade storage magic treasure like Sumra Tianxia. Emosia had actually obtained such a magic treasure first, which meant that he could hide his weapons with him. By himself, he could come and go without a trace. Whether it was a sneak attack or a battle, it would be more unexpected and the power would increase greatly. Emosia raised his hand, looked at the ring on his finger, and said with a smile, "That's right, a storage ring." He called it the Me ring. What's so great about a broken ring? Chiyu pretended to be disdainful. Emosia shrugged his shoulders and said, "It's not that great, but you don't have it." These words were very despicable, completely poking at Chiyu's pain, igniting his anger. He roared hysterically, "Kill them, kill!" Saint King took the lead, leading the exhausted demons, stimulating their remaining fighting strength, and in the blink of an eye, they fought with the Emperor's tribe. Shouts of killing immediately resounded through the sky, and blood dyed half the sky red. Tang Zhang and the others returned to the peak of Mount Tai, but did not discover this desperate battle. Otherwise, he would have definitely joined in. Looking at the desolate peak of Mount Tai, especially the dead and injured comrades on the ground, everyone fell into silence. This battle was the most desperate one in Tang Zhang's history, and the number of casualties was the most. Only now did he realize that he could not truly protect everyone's life. There was a limit to human strength. Although he was full of confidence, there were still things in this world that he could not do. A stifling atmosphere brewed in everyone's hearts. Many people squatted down with red eyes, holding their dead comrades, wiping the blood from their faces, and tears flowed out of their eyes. Who said that men were not easily moved because they had not yet been deeply hurt? This scene was the best proof of that. Although Tang Jing did not cry, the emotions in his heart were even more painful than tears. He realized that his one word, his one order, could affect many people, even affect their life and death. As the saying went, the more one had, the greater one's responsibility. He deeply understood this point. The dead included not only shamans, but also martial artists, and even a few elites of the Li Palace. Li Xiaotian had temporarily transferred them over. Thus, seeing so many people of different statuses fall together was extremely shocking. "What do we do now?" Tian Chanzi asked. Tang Zhang's gaze swept over the battlefield bit by bit, as if unwilling to miss a single detail. He wanted to deeply engrave this scene in his mind. No one urged him, only watched him. After this battle, he had already become the core of everyone's attention. Bring back all the sacrificed comrades. We want to properly bury them, so that they can rest in peace in the underworld. Tang Zhang's voice was powerful and resonant, his voice deep. Yes. The reply was similarly complex, deafening. Following that, everyone orderly found the bodies of their comrades. Because there were demons among the dead. Many people hugged each other, continuously wrestling and killing each other. In the end, they perished together, their deaths were extremely tragic. Martial artists were not completely useless. Many martial artists eventually used their lives to exhaust other martial artists to death, or a few martial artists worked together to surround and annihilate other martial artists. The role of martial artists in this battle explained to the world their battle strength and usefulness. Tang Zheng had never looked down on martial artists. After all, he had too many martial artists by his side. Furthermore, there was Lord Ji Wuxiang, this heaven-defying martial artist. The heaven's chess that he created was extremely difficult to break even for martial artists. Which martial artist would dare to boast shamelessly that he was stronger than Ji Wuxiang? It was precisely because of this attitude of his that he won the Yan family's loyalty. Even though they knew that there would be casualties, and there would be quite a few of them, the Yan family still bravely sent people to support. Tang Zheng walked to the side of the witch clan elder, and the witch clan gathered around him. The witch clan members on the altar were heavily injured. Although they managed to survive in the end, they would need to recuperate for a period of time before they could fully recover. But at this moment, the witch clan reunited, sweeping away the previous haze. They held each other's hands and chattered non-stop, as if they had thousands of words to say. This was the most realistic reaction of people who had experienced a life and death situation. Seeing Tang Zheng walking over, the witch clan members stopped talking and stared at him with burning eyes. They bowed deeply and shouted respectfully, "Master." This sentence came from the bottom of their hearts. Tang Zheng did not correct them. The witch clan had already made their choice to respect him as their master. If he did not accept their respect, it would be a blow to the witch clan's mood. Tang Zheng solemnly nodded his head, and one by one he tightly shook their hands, shaking each other's hands powerfully. In the end, when Tang Zheng held the elder's hand, the two of them looked at each other. Tang Zheng said earnestly, "Elder, I've let you suffer." The elder shook his head emotionally, "No. Master, our entire clan is grateful to you for saving our lives." After pausing for a moment, the elder said mysteriously, "Also, the grace of rebirth." Chapter 13:23. The Grace of Rebirth. Tang Zheng was completely confused. The elder was very clear about what Tang Zheng was thinking. He smiled mysteriously and explained, "Only now do we understand that there is a savage aura in the blood of the witch clan. In the past, these savage auras had always been silent. Now, they have been completely activated and have fused with our blood and bodies, completely changing us." Tang Zheng was shocked. "There's actually such a thing?" The elder nodded and sighed, "Yes, after we fuse with the savage aura, our future cultivation will be different." Tang Zheng vaguely guessed something. The savage aura will help us quickly increase our cultivation. In the future, if we meet another enemy, the witch clan will not be like this. We will become the warriors that Master is most proud of. Although the witch clan was known as a natural warrior, the witch clan in the 10,000 mountains did not display this trait. They were mostly protected by Tang Zheng. But from today onwards, this situation would completely change. They were about to become true warriors. The key to this door was already in the hands of the witch clan. As long as they turned the lock, everything would be solved. Tang Zheng and the witch clan became excited at the same time. Tang Zheng's excitement was not because he had such a capable assistant, but because he was truly happy for the witch clan. This was equivalent to the witch clan finding a gene hidden deep in their bloodline and fate. This was one of the important reasons why the witch clan became the witch clan. "Master, you have already controlled the savage aura. Your gains will be even greater." The elder looked at Tang Zheng with a burning gaze and said. When the other witch clan members heard this, they all stared at him. Without a doubt, the witch clan was also very shocked by the fact that Tang Zheng had controlled the savage aura. It was precisely because they had the savage aura in their bodies that they understood the difficulty of this matter better than others. The witch clan was also unable to control the savage aura, but after the savage aura merged with their bodies, it was of great benefit to them. But they had no way of controlling it. Now, Tang Zheng could actually control it. The difference was too great. The elder was also unable to predict what Tang Zheng would gain. Tang Zheng's heart moved, and he was also a little excited. Now that the enemy was so strong, if he could become stronger, then that would be for the best. If the savage aura really had such an effect, then it would definitely solve his desperate situation. Tang Zheng, how did you do it? The Empyrean fairy couldn't help but ask curiously. Tang Zheng didn't hide anything and truthfully explained the use of the sky-swallowing technique. Everyone suddenly realized that it was the effect of the sky-swallowing technique. Tian Chanzi was filled with emotion. The sky-swallowing technique has always been a spell of little value to the demon race. It's not recognized by anyone, and almost no demon race is willing to cultivate it. Who would have thought that it actually has such great power? Tang Zheng laughed and said, that's because they haven't grasped the true profundities of the heaven-swallowing technique. Oh, what's so special about it? Tian Chanzi asked. The sky-swallowing technique was of little value because it was only an incomplete version and lacked the core. If this core were to leak out, then the demon race's strength would increase greatly. After all, the sky-swallowing technique wasn't too complicated. Almost anyone could learn it, but the realm one cultivated to was related to one's talent and hard work. Do you want to learn it? Tang Zheng asked in return. Tian Chanzi shrugged and said, I don't want to learn it. My Kingsaman has countless secret arts, and they're not inferior to this sky-swallowing technique. Moreover, this is a demon race ability. How can a righteous person like me learn it? Seeing that Tian Chanzi didn't seem to be joking, it was clear that Tian Chanzi's views weren't too different from 1,000 years ago. They were deeply ingrained. The Empyrean fairy also had no intention of learning the sky-swallowing technique. She was the daughter of the Emperor of Heaven and was especially confident in her own abilities. Of course, she wouldn't change her home halfway and cultivate other abilities. The fallen comrades had already been collected and lined up together. It was a ghastly sight. Everyone stood in front of the corpses and bid them farewell. Tang Zheng raised his hand and said, I'll have to trouble you all to stay in Sumera Heavens for a while. When we return, we'll definitely give you a grand burial and lay you to rest. Sumera Heavens flashed and all the corpses were collected into Sumera Heavens. Only the corpses of the demon race were left on the ground. The demon sect had fled in a panic and didn't have time to collect their own people. The others stared hatefully at the corpses of the demon race. If it weren't for them, their comrades wouldn't have died. They couldn't wait to turn these demons into ashes. Everyone stand still, don't move. Suddenly, an angry roar came from the foot of the mountain. With a few swoosh sounds, a group of people soared into the sky and flew to the peak of Mount Tai. Swoosh swoosh. Everyone immediately focused on this group of uninvited guests. They were all unfamiliar faces and couldn't recognize who they were. Each and every one of them had a stiff face like a block of wood. Even their eyes were somewhat dull. Who are you people? Tang Zheng asked in a deep voice. You've destroyed Mount Tai and caused such a fierce battle. You've already caused an extremely bad influence. Why don't you just surrender? The other side scolded. Although the peak of Mount Tai was far from where ordinary people lived, and after the mountain was sealed, ordinary tourists were completely blocked out of Mount Tai. However, after all, their battle had caused too much of a commotion. There were still many ordinary people who noticed the abnormality of Mount Tai. It could be said that it had caused panic among the ordinary people. Hearing the other party's arrogant and methodical tone, Tang Zheng thoughtfully said, Why is it that the more I look at this group of people, the more they look like officials? You guessed right. Your actions have seriously threatened the security of the country. Therefore, surrender and accept the punishment. The other side said firmly, not hiding their identity. Seeing the other side admit it so openly, Tang Zheng and the others were stunned. When did the officials become so unyielding? Only, Tang Jing felt that it was somewhat laughable. Were they blind? Since they had seen the battle, did they still think that they were a match for Tang Jing and the others? Or were they trying to take advantage of the situation? Taking advantage of the fact that they had lost a lot of energy after the battle to catch them off guard. Tang Jing said in his heart, if they really thought that way, then they had made a mistake. The others were immersed in the pain of losing their comrades. Seeing this group of aggressive people, they all stared at them with unfriendly eyes. If there was a disagreement, a fight would break out. Tang Jing also didn't want to be entangled with them. Moreover, the officials were divided into several factions and he still didn't know who they were. Thus, Tang Jing waved his hand and said, "You guys should leave. If there's anything, let the person in charge come and talk." "I'm the person in charge," the person said sternly. Tang Jing frowned and stared at him. After examining him, he indeed hadn't seen this person before and asked, "Who's your superior?" "You don't have the right to ask." The other person coldly refused. Tang Jing shivered. The other person's attitude was out of his expectations. He turned his head and glanced at Li Xiaotian. Li Xiaotian shook her head. Clearly, she didn't have any information on this person. Li Xiaotian was extremely careful. She had always considered the threat of the officials to Tang Jing, so she had mobilized all her forces. She had planned the pillow talk plan and roped him in. Of course, she had also thoroughly investigated the higher-ups and the people around them. If the other person's identity was not ordinary, she would definitely have an impression of him. Li Xiaotian shook her head, indicating that she didn't recognize him. This meant that this person's identity was somewhat strange, or perhaps someone who had recently risen to prominence. Thus, Li Palace's information had been overlooked. Among the officials, the only person who had repeatedly targeted Tang Jing was the chief. Moreover, after meeting the chief last time, there was no trace of the chief. Li Palace had practically turned the entire capital upside down, but still couldn't find a single trace. Could this group be the chief's people? Tang Jing suddenly had an idea and asked without warning, "Call the chief XXX out. What kind of hero are you if you're sneaking around in the back? How dare you call master by his name?" The other person's expression suddenly changed, and she sternly reprimanded. "Master." Tang Jing was shocked, and his eyes widened. When did the chief allow others to call him master? This was too strange. Of course, he didn't know that this was the rule that 100 Faces Star had changed on a whim after replacing the chief. After 100 Faces Star became the chief, she returned to the center of power and used thunderous methods to intimidate others. However, this secret had not yet been spread. Even Li Palace's focus was not on this during this period of time, so they didn't know about this. It's really his people. Tang Jing's gaze was like lightning as he stared at this group of people. He's really persistent. He didn't look for him, but he came looking for me. This time he can forget about escaping. I'll follow the vine to the melon and find him. Tang Jing had already made up his mind to kill. Although this person had a high position and power, he had targeted him time and time again. The most important thing was that this person was too selfish and was not wholeheartedly devoted to the public. "If we don't surrender, then what do you want? And how did the chief order you to deal with us?" Tang Jing asked provocatively. "Kill without mercy," the other party said resolutely and with a murderous aura. What? The crowd was so excited that they actually dared to give the order to kill without mercy. That was because they did not put them in their eyes at all. Yen Patian had always held an extremely high position in the secular world, and was also good at weighing the pros and cons of all parties. Actually, he did not want to directly clash with the chief, but after hearing this order, his white eyebrows twitched, and he said angrily, "After killing you bunch of shrimp soldiers and crab generals, let's see what he dares to do to us." As he spoke, he looked towards Tang Jing. Tang Jing did not hesitate either, he nodded with a gloomy face, and with a tap of his foot, he took the lead and rushed out. Then I'll kill you first. Tang Zheng's voice was filled with killing intent, instantly arousing the killing intent in the hearts of the others. One by one, they shouted and rushed towards the enemy. The number of enemies was even greater than theirs. It was a black mass. Other than the leader, the others kept their mouths shut, giving off a strong sense of oppression. Seeing the enemy charging over, the leader roared and stomped on the ground with his heel. Kacha! A huge crack appeared on the hard rock. Chapter 13:24. The leader spun at high speed, and a spark suddenly shot up. Then, he turned into a flaming man. The bright red flames dyed the surroundings a fiery red, and a heat wave assaulted his face. This was a spinning fire top. Before it even reached him, he could clearly feel the threat. Tang Zheng was surprised. This person's ability was even stronger than the heavenly kings of the dragon group, especially that fire king, who seemed to have the same ability as this person. The chief has taken over the people and businesses of the dragon group. This person must be the upgraded product of the Fire King. Back then, the Fire King was already not his match, let alone now. Although the other party was an upgraded product, Tang Zheng's strength had long since increased by who knows how many levels. As a result, he struck out with his palm. Boom! The savage aura was released. The palm collided with the fire top, causing sparks to fly in all directions. The savage aura was not afraid of flames at all, and quickly drilled into the opponent's chest. His chest caved in, but the other party did not fall, and the flames did not extinguish. Instead, the corner of his mouth revealed a sinister smile. Bang! His fist flew out at high speed, leaving his arm. Like a cannonball, it fiercely struck Tang Zheng's chest. The two of them retreated at the same time. The flames on the fist quickly jumped towards Tang Zheng's body, trying to ignite him. Tang Zheng's chest did not cave in. The chaotic Vajra spell blocked the fierce attack, but the chaotic Vajra spell was unable to block the corrosion of the flames. You're still too inexperienced to play with fire with me. With a thought, a burst of true fire jumped out from Tang Zheng's body, and the flames immediately wrapped around the other party's flames, completely refining them. After the fist struck Tang Zheng, it quickly flew back. Just as Tang Zheng extinguished the flames, the fist flew back to the leader's arm, as good as new. Tang Zheng's pupils constricted as he stared at the scene. After a while, he shouted as if he had just woken up from a dream, "You are no longer human." The leader also stabilized his body, the flames on his body still burning fiercely. He lowered his head and looked at his chest. The huge pit that had sunken made him look somewhat miserable, but his movements were not affected by it. It was even more impossible for him to be scared off. Just as Tang Zheng had guessed, he was not a life form but a mechanical warrior. His outer appearance was just a layer of silicone, disguising himself as a human. The mechanical warriors have been upgraded to such an extent. This is truly an eye-opener. Tang Zheng clicked his tongue in wonder. The power of technology was extremely powerful, and he had a deeper understanding of this. But you're still too weak, Tang Zheng said disdainfully. The wild aura has entered your body, let's see how long you can last. However, the leader acted as if he hadn't heard anything. He wasn't worried about that nuisance of a barbaric aura at all. Moreover, he was still standing there safe and sound. Tang Zheng's pupils shrank. He had a bad premonition. The barbaric aura would cause people to tremble at the sound of it and avoid it like the plague. However, it did not seem to have any effect on these mechanical warriors. At least, that was the result for now. Tang Zheng turned pale with fright. He had always thought that no one could resist the destructive power of the savage aura, especially this kind of simple-minded, brawny guy. But the final results showed that he was very wrong. He racked his brains and finally figured out the reason. Mechanical warriors are not life forms, they're just machines. The barbaric aura enters the meridians of the human body, which means that it's only effective on life forms. Naturally, you're not affected by it. If the barbaric aura really descends into the human world, other than the witch race and the demon race, wouldn't these mechanical warriors be able to survive as well? They wouldn't even need time to adapt. Tang Jing sighed. Perhaps, Qiyu would never have dreamed that his painstaking plan would not only benefit himself, but also these mechanical warriors. Although you're not afraid of the barbaric aura, you're still overestimating yourself if you want to fight against me. Tang Jing growled and charged at the other party again. Whoosh! A leg came down vertically. This was the heaven splitter that Qiyu had imparted to him when he made a bet with the inner demons. Ever since Qiyu went against him, he had almost never used or cultivated the heaven splitter. This was because Qiyu was too cunning. He was afraid that Qiyu would also leave a back door in the heaven splitter. If he used the heaven splitter to fight in the future, he would be in trouble. This time, he didn't have a suitable treasure, and the heaven swallowing technique was unpredictable. Therefore, he used the heaven splitter at the last moment. The heaven splitter had helped him defend against enemies before and was very powerful. When he used it again, it was as smooth as flowing water. One leg came down fiercely, and his aura was firmly locked onto the leader. The leader immediately realized the threat of death and shouted, "Vajra!" Boom! The earth shook and the mountains shook. A giant flew up from the bottom of the mountain and landed heavily on the mountain peak, protecting the leader. Bang! The heaven splitter hit Vajra's leg. Gotcha! Sparks flew from the leg, and electrical wires appeared. Vajra didn't move at all, as if this injury was just an itch. This wasn't the most frightening thing. The next scene completely stunned Tang Jing, and he almost couldn't move his eyes away. The wound that was emitting sparks was actually healing automatically, just like a cultivator healing. Vajra was a giant mecha, and it actually had the ability to heal automatically. This was really terrifying. The leader seemed to have seen through Tang Jing's shocked thoughts and smiled proudly. How is it? Now you know how powerful Vajra is, right? Tang Jing did not say a word. Vajra's power was indeed beyond his imagination. However, he didn't know that the automatic healing displayed by Vajra was fundamentally different from that of cultivators. This was the power of technology. There were nanomachines in Vajra's body that specialized in healing. They were very faint and invisible to the naked eye. Therefore, Tang Jing didn't see the nanomachines in the wound that was emitting sparks. Vajra, kill him. The leader waved his hand and ordered with a murderous aura. Bang! Just as he finished speaking, the figure of the Four Symbols warrior also descended from the sky. The Four Symbols warrior was the same size as a normal person. In front of Vajra, it was the difference between an ant and an elephant. You dare to go against Vajra with this little ability? The leader laughed in disdain. Tang Jing's face was fierce as he ordered, "Four Symbols warrior, help me dismantle it." The Four Symbols warrior didn't say a word and charged towards Vajra. With every step it took, its body became much taller and bigger. Bang, bang, bang. Each of its footsteps was like a heavy drum, beating on one's soul. The Four Symbols warrior became bigger and bigger. The bureau chief was dumbfounded. This was his first time seeing the Four Symbols warrior, and he couldn't help but be deeply shocked. When the Four Symbols warrior arrived in front of Vajra, it also became a huge monster that was almost the same size as the mecha warriors. Vajra wasn't afraid and waved its huge fists to meet the Four Symbols warrior. Bang, bang, bang. They went back and forth, and their fists hit each other again and again. The Four Symbols warrior wasn't injured at all, but after Vajra took a few punches, its body had a few more wounds. It didn't have an invulnerable body like the Four Symbols warrior, but it had nanomachines, so its wounds were healing bit by bit. The two huge monsters made the battlefield a mess, and the corpses of the demons were almost trampled into the ground by them. Bang! The two fought to the edge of the cliff, but they still didn't retreat. After their fists hit each other, they fell from the cliff at the same time. Tang Zheng was shocked and rushed to the edge of the cliff. He realized that the two were falling very fast, and in the blink of an eye, they passed through the clouds halfway up the mountain. Boom! A loud sound came from the bottom of the mountain, and Mount Tai seemed to shake a little. Rocks rolled down and rumbled as they fell again. Tang Zheng was shocked. Why was there only one falling sound? Was it the four symbols warrior or Vidra? Ha, your thing is already smashed into pieces. The leader laughed maniacally. Tang Zheng focused, as if wanting to see through the clouds and see what was happening below. Rumble. A deafening sound came from below the clouds. Tang Zheng's eyes widened as he saw a huge monster flying up from below the clouds. Vidra! Tang Zheng exclaimed. Both of Vidra's feet were spurting flames, allowing it to fly freely. Obviously, the loud crash was made by the four symbols warrior. Could it be that the four symbols warrior is injured? The mountain was so high that his firm belief in the four symbols warrior couldn't help but waver. No, it's definitely fine. Back in the world of spirits and souls, it was fine even after falling into such a dangerous river. How could it be fine after falling from a mountain? Moreover, it has broken its seal and is even more powerful than before. The leader didn't know this and taunted without restraint. He and Vidra attacked from the front and back, glaring at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng's belief in the four symbols warrior was strengthened again, so he didn't fly down to investigate. He looked at the other party with eyes full of cold murderous intent, saying, "You want to take advantage of the situation and take advantage of the situation. Your wishful thinking is wrong. I'm very angry, so you're all dead. I'm going to tear you apart into pieces. Kill him." The leader didn't intend to listen. Vidra took the lead to attack after giving the order. Whoosh! A huge fist came from behind Tang Zheng, smashing towards his head. Tang Zheng's figure flashed and flew above the leader's head, roaring, "Sky Splitter!" Bang! A huge shadow of a leg descended from the sky and immediately enveloped the leader. His whole body was immediately covered in raging flames, and a flame spurted out from the soles of his feet. It spun rapidly and collided with the shadow of the leg. Boom! There was a loud explosion and sparks flew everywhere. The flames on the leader's body were extinguished and puffs of green smoke rose. He knelt on the ground with Tang Zheng's leg on his shoulder. This leg struck his shoulder quickly, ruthlessly, and accurately. The huge force immediately caused him to kneel on the ground and his knees to shatter. He didn't have nanomachines like Vidra, so this huge wound couldn't be repaired. He could only raise his hands with difficulty and grab Tang Zheng's leg. "Humph, is this all you've got? I haven't used up all my strength yet." After Tang Zheng said this, a surge of power spurted out from his leg, like the straw that broke the camel's back. Clang! Chapter 13:25. The leader fell apart into a pile of parts, but it didn't affect the movements of the other mechanical warriors. Their gazes didn't even change. These were mechanical warriors, true killing machines without any emotions. No matter how much they looked like humans, they were still cold and lifeless. Whoosh! King Kong attacked fiercely from behind. Tang Zheng tilted his body slightly in an attempt to dodge the attack. Boom! With a loud boom, the mountain shook and the earth quaked. The four symbols venerable quietly appeared on the mountain peak. With a single kick, he swept the Vidra. King Kong fell to the ground, causing the earth to tremble again. The battle between the two behemoths affected the others, and they were too late to avoid it. The four symbols venerable pounced on King Kong as soon as he fell. Tang Zheng was delighted and couldn't hide his joy. He shouted excitedly, "For Symbols Venerable, finish him off." The four Symbols Venerable had a tacit understanding and attacked even more fiercely. King Kong stood up and flames rose from the soles of his feet and flew into the air. The four Symbols Venerable wasn't worried at all. He stomped heavily on the ground and shot into the sky like a cannonball. His huge fist hit King Kong's soles directly. Crack! King Kong's feet immediately shattered into pieces with sparks flying everywhere. The nanomachines quickly repaired it. Seeing this, Tang Jing immediately reminded loudly, "For Symbols Venerable, take advantage of this opportunity to defeat him completely." The four Symbols Venerable didn't say a word, but he deeply understood Tang Jing's intention. His punches and kicks weren't fast, but King Kong couldn't evade them at all. It was as if only these two were left in this battle. The others paled in comparison. After all, such an earth-shattering battle was rare. In the distance stood a person, Junko. Junko was very secretive and it was difficult for others to discover her presence. She was under the orders of Multiform to pay close attention to the situation. Of course, the focus was on the battle between Tang Jing and the demons. Multiform was very interested in this dispute. Chiyu actually wanted to bring the wildlands back to the world. His ambition wasn't small. Multiform was someone from ancient times and was no stranger to the wildlands. He knew how powerful they were. Of course, he didn't want the wildlands to reappear in the world. After all, his desire for power had already sprouted, and he wouldn't allow anything to happen from his hands. The reappearance of the wildlands meant that Chiyu would rule the world, and there would be no place for him to play. Therefore, he had the same request as Tang Jing. Both of them did not want the wildlands to reappear in the world. However, in order to preserve his strength, he did not want to act rashly. Therefore, he had been ordering Junko to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight, so that he could reap the benefits. His wishful thinking was very good, and he even succeeded. Chiyu and Tang Jing were both injured. However, the 100-change-star sovereign did not expect that the great Chiyu would be chased and beaten by Tang Jing. This was too humiliating. As someone from the ancient past, he also blushed with shame and criticized Chiyu. However, he did not hesitate for long and made a decision. In the end, his eyes locked on Tang Jing. After all, Tang Jing was a rising star. The impression he gave the 100-change-star sovereign was far less than Chiyu. Chiyu made the 100-change-star sovereign fearful. Even if Chiyu looked injured, who knew if he was deliberately mystifying? Therefore, the 100-change-star sovereign made a decision almost without hesitation. Tang Jing had ruined his plans time and time again. The 100-change-star sovereign naturally wanted to get rid of this stumbling block, especially when this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Now, the 100-change-star sovereign had just succeeded in seizing power. Countless eyes were watching him, and he could not leave the capital. Otherwise, he would definitely come personally and catch Tang Jing off guard. He couldn't do it himself, so he sent his most trusted Junko to lead the mechanical warriors and King Kong. He took them from the previous leader. He did not feel sorry for them and directly sent them to fight, hoping to win in one battle. Junko looked at the battle on the peak of Mount Tai from afar. Her eyes were wide open, and her delicate face was full of killing intent. She originally thought that picking up scraps would be an easy task. After all, the battle between Tang Jing and the demon clan was so fierce, and the consumption and damage were great. She had seen the strength of the mechanical warriors in King Kong, so she was very confident. However, she did not expect that although this team suffered heavy losses, their will to fight was as strong as the sun in the sky. Especially when they saw their comrades who had sacrificed themselves, their hearts were filled with anger. The Nephilim had escaped, and they had nowhere to vent their anger. The appearance of the mechanical warriors and King Kong gave them a chance to vent. Of course, they would not miss this good opportunity. Therefore, the battle was particularly fierce. These lifeless mechanical warriors did not gain any advantage. The mechanical warriors were not to be trifled with. They also killed their opponents. Fresh blood stimulated their nerves again. Suddenly, the battle became more intense. Junko saw this scene and understood that the 100 Change Star Sovereign's plan had failed. Tang Zheng was not so easy to deal with. He recorded this battle from afar and sent it back to the capital. The 100 Change Star Sovereign was watching closely. When he saw the situation of the battle, he was flustered and exasperated and flew into a rage. He already knew that his wishful thinking was wrong. Tang Zheng was not a soft persimmon. He could not need him. His eyes flashed, and he said to himself hatefully, "Tang Zheng, you changed so quickly. I really underestimated you. If I can't kill you this time, you will definitely become a big problem for me in the future. The Li Palace is your left arm and right arm. I recently found that there are many people in the center of power in the Li Palace. I will get rid of them now, so that the Li Palace can no longer infiltrate my territory." As the 100 Change Star Sovereign spoke, an unfathomable smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Tang Zheng and Li Xiaotian did not expect that the spies they had buried so deeply were still discovered by the 100 Change Star Sovereign and wanted to kill them. The 100 Change Star Sovereign was indeed different. He was very different from the other people in the hierarchy of power. He was swift and decisive and did things his own way. It was precisely this kind of personality that attracted a group of people. These people were a group of people at the top of the hierarchy of power. Because of them, the 100 Change Star Sovereign was able to control the top of the hierarchy so quickly. The purge operation begins. The 100 Change Star Sovereign secretly gritted his teeth and immediately made a call. A series of operations began quietly. The people involved had no idea that a disaster was about to befall them. "Junko, come back." Although the 100 Change Star Sovereign was unwilling, he had no choice but to give the order. Junko gritted her teeth and stared deeply at the battlefield. She resolutely turned around and disappeared without looking back. As for the mechanical warriors and King Kong at the top of Mount Tai, she did not look at them again. Those were products that could be mass-produced. What did it matter if they were dead or alive? Anyway, they could be produced again. If she could kill more of Tang Zheng's forces, wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? Tang Zheng did not know that Junko had secretly escaped. His attention was focused on the battle between King Kong and the Four Symbols Venerable. The Four Symbols Venerable fully unleashed his combat strength. King Kong's defeat was gradually becoming apparent. With only one leg left, it was difficult for him to survive alone. Although he had nanomachines to repair his wounds, the Four Symbols Venerable's attacks were too fierce. The nanomachines could not be repaired in time and were heavily injured by the Four Symbols Venerable again and again. Under such circumstances, there was not much suspense in the battle. The Four Symbols Venerable once again delivered a fatal blow. Using both his hands and feet, a terrifying force struck King Kong. With a boom, half of King Kong's body was shattered from his shoulder to his waist. King Kong staggered and quickly retreated. He only had one leg and one arm left. Without needing Tang Zheng's order, the Four Symbols Venerable immediately followed up with a kick to King Kong's head. Crack! Sparks flew in all directions as King Kong's head flew off. With a whoosh, it flew down the cliff. The headless half of its body swayed. Finally, with a boom, it fell to the ground. After trembling a few times, the nanomachines that could not be seen with the naked eye completely ceased their activities. Without a head, King Kong was as good as dead. The nanomachines were of the same origin as King Kong. Now that King Kong was dead, the nanomachines naturally lost their power and were completely paralyzed. Tang Zheng was not surprised by this outcome. The Four Symbols Venerable came from ancient times after all. They were the guardians of the witch tribe. Even Qi Yu wanted to take them for himself. This showed just how extraordinary they were. King Kong was a product of a short period of time. It looked very frightening, but it was a paper tiger. When faced with a real tiger, the paper tiger would naturally be defeated. The others' battles were also nearing the end. Although the mechanical warriors were powerful, they were still wiped out in the end. Tang Zheng's people also paid a price, but it was far less tragic than the battle with the demons. After the last mechanical warrior fell, the crowd let out a deafening cheer. The suppressed killing intent was released and relieved to a certain extent. After everyone finished cleaning up the battlefield, they gathered together. They looked at each other and fell into silence again. This sudden attack caused everyone to be somewhat puzzled, especially when they knew that all of this came from the chief. Yen Padian changed his previous attitude and took the lead to break the silence, saying, "Chief is so vicious and merciless, he has already completely stood on the opposite side of us, so, we absolutely cannot be lenient." After all, Yen Padian was not as unafraid of authority as cultivators. He was a person who had been in the secular world for his entire life, and some of his views were deeply rooted, such as his relationship with the authorities. Unless he had no other choice, he definitely did not want to shed all pretense of cordiality. But this time, he actually took the initiative to say these words. That meant that he had changed his mentality and mind, or perhaps he had also become as lawless as Tang Zheng and the others. Empyrean Fairy snorted disdainfully and said, "Qin Shi Huang is nothing, let alone this person." As always, she showed contempt for power and disdain for the chief. Tang Zheng's face was gloomy as he looked at the messy battlefield. His tone became deep as he said, "Even if you have to dig 3 feet into the ground, you have to find him for me." Everyone's minds shook as they understood that Tang Zheng had completely set his mind on killing. This meant that he had completely broken off from the power and their relationship would deteriorate. Li Xiaotian did not object, but he had already made up his mind. After returning, he would definitely use all of Li Palace's power to minimize the impact of all of this as much as possible. It was not to the extent where Tang Jing would truly be at odds with the power level, where he would strive for the support of more people, and only burn the flames of war towards the chief. "Let's go home." Tang Jing did not say much, he waved his hand and returned to the capital. He did not know that a fierce battle was unfolding between the demon clan and the former subordinates of the Yellow Emperor, just like the continuation of the Battle of Zhulu tens of thousands of years ago.